Just gonna quickly post on our Facebook page that I don't know if anyone ever looks at, but here we go. I'm gonna have to do like actual social media at some point.
I'm gonna have to hire somebody for that.
I did have a. Oh, never mind. I shouldn't say the thing I was gonna say because we're currently streaming. All right. So while people are connecting, agenda I have some general update and question stuff for everybody. Then Peter's going to talk about what went good, what went bad, what he's going to do next time for the Nopen. Mitch is going to walk us through his contest versus competitions conversation, and then I want to walk through the secondaries in 9th edition and talk about which ones are just trash and which ones are good and what we think of them. We're not going to do all the faction-specific ones because I think that would take too long. But talking about which faction-specific ones are the most broken would be a thing that we'll probably do. Lots of them, actually. I actually think the faction-specific ones are one of the main problems.
Yeah.
Definitely not helping.
No.
Definitely not helping.
Figuring out that I can play a Dark Angels list that if it's given the middle of the board gets 45 secondaries automatically, pretty much, is like, oh, I'm not...
I'm not participating anymore, are I? I'm not participating anymore, are I?
I'm not participating. Oh man, I just moved my camera because Mitch is off center. That's not how the world works. That's not how reality works. I'm like, Mitch is not center. I'll just shift my camera and that will make Mitch center somehow.
I like that the basic assumption. I like that the basic assumption subconsciously for that to work, Colin, is that the world would move around you.
It's the Logan throwing the sandwich away story, Mitch. It's just like there's no logic you can apply to it that makes any sense.
I learned it from watching you.
I know.
I learned it from watching you.
I'm gonna grab some water and then we'll start talking. I'll be right back.
Sounds great. Sounds great. All right, I'm looking up FAQ. All right, I'm looking up the general FAQ chat questions for the general chat of in the Biff Pod Discord. Right.
Peter, are you guys still selling stuff to benefit the Nopen?
Not any. The clothing, I believe, is down because there's minimum amounts we can sell before it costs us money. But the objective markers are forever. And Hellstorm Wargaming is releasing a product line about the Nopen as well that'll go towards the charity. So
you
just told me that today.
Directly point to like act now kind of thing. Okay.
No. I think I'll double check. Maybe they kept it up, but they were supposed to take it all down on last Monday.
Okay.
Because you need to sell like 30 shirts and 20 hats to break even on any shipment. So
I was gonna buy clothing and then I thought, how many places do I go where this clothing will make any sense? So then I donated instead.
I bought the hat because it's now my official judge hat. Like this is what I'm gonna wear for the next season.
I should have bought a hat because I wear hats when we're streaming all the time, and wearing 40K hats while streaming would make perfect sense. But I didn't have that level of forethought that everyone else had. Also, this is the only hat I've ever bought that actually fits my giant head, and so there's that also. Like if they don't come in, in extraordinarily large sizes, I don't get to buy one. It's kind of how that works.
Yeah, it's one of those one size fits all is a lie things. I get it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I'm still breaking in this hat for that very reason. It's the right size flex fit, but it's just slightly too small. They're always a little bit that way, and I gotta stretch it out.
At the end of the year, work sent me an email that said, pick out which of these 5 end-of-year gifts that you'd like to receive. And I read it as, which of these 5 articles of clothing that won't fit me would I like to own?
Mm-hmm.
So.
It's definitely like.
Which is exactly what I did.
Yep.
They have a Star Wars shirt that's Star Wars and MuleSoft, and it comes in 3X, and it's been out of stock the entire year that I've worked at the company, and I'm actually starting to get mad about it because other people wear it on calls, and it's an AT-AT made up of stuff for our company, which I'm sure they didn't have permission to make, and that makes it even better. So, No one's going to tell us how we sound. We have no one watching. All right, then. Oh, that's because I told the general chat that we're going, and they're busy in their own conversation. Okay, then. Well,
Yep.
let's presume that we sound okay. Welcome to Best in Faction.
A podcast about competitive Warhammer 40k,
I am Colin,
I'm Mitch.
and I'm Chuck.
and we also have the Falcon.
Free!
Oh, I like that. That's after the Falcon has gone through the wood chipper. Oh, that was the Nopen.
That's
All his
a.
voice can do, people.
Sounds like. We'll have to ask Seth after.
I actually missed the cacawing. I know that you got tired of it, but I missed the cacaws. Well, welcome to episode 90. No, 80.
Oh, I'll do it someday. Someday it'll be back. Oh man, where's my?
80? 90? 80. 80.
700.
Yes. This Chuck is a bit quiet, but that's normal. I concur. That is normal. It was funny doing audio tests for Hammer Out Cancer with the masks on and seeing who just naturally was going to be fine and who was not going to be fine. Was pretty great. By the way, Mitch, I watched a bunch of your content while editing videos, and you are very easy to understand. Mitch got excited, and it is very easy to understand.
I'm a loud guy. What can I say?
No, I'm not. There is for those that are curious, almost all of the Hammer Out Cancer content is on YouTube. There is one late night stream where people didn't stop the stream, and so it's a 6-hour video. And I have tried a lot of things to edit it, and it does not want to behave. So there are 2 late night games that are still not up. They are both Mitch games, which is how I know Mitch is very easy to listen to because... No, that's not true. The first one is Chuck playing into the Demonettes. It's that game and the game after it. I'm really struggling to put them up on YouTube, so they'll be up soon.
Probably my game with Noah against his Admech, I think.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah.
So let's give you guys some updates on some stuff, but then after that we're going to have the Falcon regale us with stories of the past. Well, a week ago. We're going to talk about the Nopen. We're going to talk about...
In 2020 time.
Yes, that's right. It feels a long time ago. We're going to talk about the Nopen, what worked, what didn't work, what he's going to do differently going forward. We're going to talk about... and then Mitch has a great topic about competitions versus contests, which he explained to me months ago, and I vaguely remember what it's about, so I'll be learning like everybody else. And then sometimes we come up with a topic for the show, and it sits on a list for a really long time. And then after that, we're going to talk through the secondaries in 9th edition. What's good, what's bad, what's stupid. Some of them are not even good or bad, they're just stupid. So we'll talk through that. Updates. Hammer Out Cancer, as you guys know, was a big success. I do want to tell you that I have begun Charity Hammer planning. I am currently tentatively writing the date August on my notes. That presumes a fairly aggressive and successful amount of vaccinations to happen between now and then, so it may not be real. I'll tell you that ATC that was going to be in July canceling didn't make me optimistic about other people's views of this, so maybe it's not happening in August, but we are beginning to work on Charity Hammer, and over the next few months you're going to see an aggressive amount of stream change on our stream to try to make it as involved and great as we can. We're going to start doing multi-camera switching and stuff like that, like Art of War does. Lots going on there. And then I'm also aggressively painting the things that we've been using on stream. So trying to make that better for everybody. That's what's going on with Charity Hammer. All of our streams are going on YouTube. We'll start streaming to YouTube and Twitch at the same time in the next week. I figured out how to do that. So if you prefer YouTube, you can watch it there. If you prefer Twitch, you can watch it there. It doesn't make no difference. I believe either way you can chat with both. It looks like that's how it worked at the Nopen. It looks like it just said during when the Nopen was doing it. It looks like it just said where they were chatting from.
Yeah, it was just restream.
Yeah, so that works fine. And then let's see. If you would like the objective markers from Hammer Out Cancer, which why wouldn't you? They are for sale at 3D6 Wargaming now, and they are raising money for charity. If you'd like them, we are going to do a different one for every single Charity Hammer event, so you will be able to collect them. I feel like the next one might be a cartoon Ridge Runner to start making objective markers out of the Charity Hammer lore. So maybe a gold Necron would be good too. Actually, a gold Necron would be good because the gold Necrons have shown up throughout Charity Hammer.
I look forward to reaching the point where we can have a table of 6 objectives that are all 6 different charity hammers.
Yeah, right.
That'd be cool.
That's a lot of years from now. Falcon, what you think about Scary Baby Shark impression and how do you rate it?
1 out of 7. Terrible. Ruined my day that day. Never again.
Whoa. I didn't know what he was talking about, but I also wasn't expecting quite such a harsh take.
Yeah, I mean, the takes in here are hot.
A week and a half ago, Scary had me on for like the Just Put Paint on It show that he does every day. And and at the end, apparently, he had some competition where if someone donated X amount of dollars to his Patreon, he would do a Baby Shark impression. And apparently it's been a thing that's been escalating for the last year. The more money they put in, the crazier it gets. So during the stream that I was on, near the end of it, he ended up in like a tankini with a Baby Shark hat on and sang the full song while I had to watch. It was awful. Because I couldn't shut it off. I had to sit there through the whole thing. It was
And record it.
Yeah, there's pictures. It's a bad scenario.
I am old enough and missed the younger ages of my kids that I have not actually experienced Baby Shark.
Well, I've experienced it and I'm used to it. Like it dulls you. You know, it's like back in the day with Barney. Eventually, you're just like, okay, this is the song that happened. But Scary in that very tight midriff showing shirt with the Baby Shark hat on is a whole other thing. It's a whole other type of scarring.
All right. Let me see what other things I have. I wrote down prizes, and I don't know why. Okay, well, maybe that will come to me. 36 Wargaming. Oh, yeah, I can't send all the prizes out yet because people won't answer their emails. So I have said now twice on the show who won. If you won and I don't have your address, you can't have your crap. Also, Val Heffelfinger took the Orc Mega Prize that he won and re-gifted it, I believe, to the Nopen. So someone from the Nopen has won that prize, I believe.
Okay, I'll find out who that is.
And so I need to send those to that person. If he did not get away to giving it away and he doesn't want it, we can just give them away at the next Charity Hammer. Okay. So that is
Turns out the person who won it in the Nopen is actually one of the Nova TOs, and so they're going to be passing it on and giving it away there. It's just going to constellation bounce around.
Just like that Necron army. Same idea. Like it just passes forever and ever. No one actually plays it. It just ends up on a shelf.
Oh, Noah is pretty excited to play with it, so I think it's found its home.
Yeah, which is so great. We do have, Chuck and I had kind of an interesting idea that we'll be doing over the next few weeks that if you have feedback about how to make it awesome, you should get that feedback to us. So we're in a constant search to do competitive content that allows us to talk about games. That is the thing that everyone seems to appreciate the most about the show. So what we're going to do, Chuck has a relatively defined sisters list. I don't think you're really in exploration changing mode as much anymore, right, Chuck? Is that fair?
I have essentially 2 small variations.
Okay.
So yeah, it's pretty set.
And also right now, because there's not actually an army right now where I would say 100% this is what I would take to a tournament. I'm just playing everything at the moment. So the idea we had is we would do an RTT, and I would basically script it for Chuck. I'll pretend to be 3 different people, and he'll play a rando weird list from somebody's collection, like 9 Lehman Russes or Chaos Monster Mash, but they're not really the right monsters, or something like that will be his first round opponent, and then his second round opponent will be something more complicated, more difficult to beat, and then the third round will be like the top player at the tournament playing a really good counter to sisters. or maybe a moderately good. I don't really know what the really good counter to sisters is.
Please educate me on this really good
Yes.
counter to sisters.
I still think the White Scars matchup is good for the White Scars, but I don't know. Maybe not. I don't know. So so we've talked about that. Mitch is excited maybe to be one of those round opponents. So that makes me think that
I will show up as the random Space Wolf guy.
yes.
Yeah, I trust Mitch to be that random game one that you have to worry about. Like, what is this crap?
Yeah, right.
What he's doing.
I don't know what it does, but it's all hurting me simultaneously.
So the idea is we do this and it's streamed, and maybe we can even get the Falcon to commentate on the final game. But we'll get this thing streamed, and then what we'll do is go on the show, and Chuck will do a tournament recap of the stream, and Chuck and the rest of us will interview him about how his pretend tournament went. So that's the idea. I'm actually thinking we might do it over 2 weekends, and it might be a GT for Chuck, because I think this is fun enough, and especially if Mitch is going to help me do the games. I think
because then we can alternate.
Exactly, and I can do 2 on one weekend and 2 on another week. Like we can break them up. But this is something I'm putting thought into. There are currently conversations in our Discord about what sorts of costumes I should wear and what sorts of things I should say on stream to pretend to be other people. So that'll be great. Somebody says, could someone make a donation and have their army list entered so you could see how it would perform? Well, maybe.
I would say let us experiment with this much of it so far.
Let's try it first.
I think that's something we can use next time.
Yeah, and similarly to what we would have run into if we had been a late round for the Nopen, which is something that I believe we'll talk about. We don't have every army, and I don't know how to competently play everything. Like,
yeah, that's true.
I can play things okay, and that's fine for an early round. But if it's like a competitive list, like I don't know, like I haven't played it with or against Blood Angels yet. So if someone was like, I need you to play my Blood Angels army, I'd want to get practice games with that before actually putting it on stream.
Just Sangard, point them in a direction and go. I mean, that's right.
Well,
like that's all there is to Blood
some
Angels.
lists are easier than others.
Complexity than that.
Some lists are easier than others, and I do kind of like the idea of playing the 3 keepers, Morty and Magnus, but playing it poorly, because it's like you're the guy at the tournament that brought the Super Smash list, and everyone's worried about facing you, but you don't really know what you're doing.
I think I would enjoy watching you play that.
Yeah.
Just by the number of times I played it into you and see how what stuck and what didn't.
Yeah. Well, I would need psychic cards. I think if I had psychic cards, I'd be okay. But the chaos premise of I have 11 powers, and they all have weird names. Disgustingly petulant sphere. Like I don't know what that is. Like
petulant. It just looks at you real sad.
I think it's only 13 powers, so you'll be all right.
I like the idea that it's a chaos sphere that looks at you sad all the time. No matter what you do, it's disappointed in your life choices. It just follows you around. It just follows you around. You really could have done better. Now? What's that?
You're gonna go on that objective now?
Yeah.
Is that wise?
I mean, I guess you can play it this way. That might work. Like that.
Your mom wanted you to be a doctor. Just saying.
It should have been you that died on that roller coaster.
No, not like this, Mitch. Not like this.
Someone says, could you just play as Nick, hide in the corner, have no idea what Chuck's list does, and somehow win? Unnecessarily harsh and yet funny is what I would call it.
I mean,
I feel like Colin does that a lot, so maybe we do something else.
I mean, I feel like that's just a trademark move. If you want to win games, you got to be willing to just hide.
Yeah.
And let your opponent make an opening.
Right? I would say this year that's the thing I've gotten the best at is stop just throwing shit away because I want to use up movement points. Just sit still and wait. Let them make the mistake.
I find that with vehicles not taking penalties to hit, I find that I move them more than I should. It's like I'm making a point of moving them every round. Like, I haven't moved this tank yet. I should move it.
Get your steps in. You got to get your steps in.
I'm allowed to move this without penalty. The guard game that Chuck and I played, I think I moved the mana cores every single turn. Like, no, I'm still not happy with where they are. They got to go over here now.
I think in games with both you and Zach, I've been able to kill the mana cores because you guys moved them around.
Yeah, that's right.
It's just like, okay, thanks.
By the way, for those that are super curious, on Friday I streamed 2 really interesting games that you can find on our Twitch. They'll be on YouTube tomorrow. One of them was Trogdor into Death Guard, but it's not the Death Guard Chuck was playing. Zach played 100 Poxwalkers and Terminator spam, and I was winning that game, and then I wasn't, and it went badly from there. I made some bad decisions with Trogdor, and it turns out that if Trogdor dies because you make bad decisions, and you've also lost both Dimacherons, you do not have a lot of tools left in that list. But then we played...
Most of your list is gone.
Yes, right. But then, yeah, that's like 1,200 points of my list between those 3 models. And then I played Dark Angels into that same Death Guard list. And the takeaway from that game was, I think Dark Angels might just be better Death Guard. That was the takeaway from that list. So if you want to see what I'm talking about, you can go find that on our Twitch.
Dark Angels are spicy. They're real spicy.
We basically played table quarters, and we both aimed at the middle of the center objective. We both took secondaries about that center objective, and then we both went to that center objective, and then all of his stuff was dead.
Yeah, because a lot of his tools just don't do enough against your stuff.
His army hit you and killed 5 Terminators.
Yes.
And then you killed his army.
Because
oh.
if you guys didn't know this, 1 CP, nobody can fight your unit at more than 1 deep, is a really big deal.
Yeah.
That might be the best stratagem in the book. That's really good. So
you can combine that with all the other defense stratagems as well. Right? Like you can just pile on all these. Like they now have more layers of defense than anyone else.
Yes.
On that squad.
And they still put out great offense.
Yep.
Yeah.
And as I was
great psychic powers.
Yeah, the best, maybe the best psychic tree in the game. If Doom was in there, it would be the best. Like Doom is the only thing making me feel like maybe not. And Doom also has, of course, Fortune in the same treat. But anyways, so I'm really enjoying fooling around with the Dark Angels. They're not going to be my tournament army by any means. Don't worry, Falcon. Falcon doesn't want to listen to the show if I'm going to talk about Dark Angels every time. But I really thought we would riff there, but I don't know if Falcon is even here anymore.
I'm here. It's okay.
All right.
I don't want to watch the show anyway. I mean,
Well, all right then.
Wow. Someone calling an ambulance for that bird.
Yeah. Okay, so playing the Dark Angels, you'll see very quickly that the difference was I basically was able to shoot his army and be as good as him in combat. And it's really gross. Now, as I was playing Dark Angels, everyone's complaining about how overpowered they are. And so I was on our Discord voice, which, by the way, if you want to chat with us, we're all on there regularly. But I was on there, and I was chatting while I was painting, and I asked them, why are you guys so worried about Dark Angels? They seem great, but they don't seem broken. And their explanation was wonderful, which was, yeah, you're playing the best stuff in the game into them. That's what you're thinking about. The problem is that the Dark Angels exacerbate the have and have-nots for the Codex releases.
Yeah.
Like, they're as good as White Scars, maybe. Or a lot of people think they're better. So you have, like, White Scars, Blood Angels, and Dark Angels that are all playing with a different tier of rules than, Guard and Eldar and Orcs and a bunch of the game. And so if I'm thinking about going to a tournament and I only have a certain number of armies to pick from, then yes, Dark Angels are a big problem. My attitude of thinking about them as, well, how am I going to deal with them? I always play fast armies, and I think if you play a fast army well, you can just outplay the mission against Dark Angels. I don't think you even need to kill that Terminator unit in the middle of the table, but there's a very, very small number of armies that can do that. So
there's also the secondary problem with Dark
Angels.
Yes. Yeah. Like the really powerful thing about Dark Angels isn't just that, okay, cool, they've gone back to I can create a basically unkillable, untouchable, shooty death ball. That if you try and come into me, I will just eviscerate and take minimal losses.
Yeah.
But they can do that, say, cool, this objective, yeah, that one right there, that one's going to get me 15 points unless you knock me off of it. Everything I have is OBSEC and instant death. I mean, not like the old rule, but like literally just evaporates everything. I can shoot out of this so I can contently blow you off of some other objectives and make me feel comfortable that I will not get totally outpaced in the primary, and then I'm going to rack up at least 30 plus points in the secondary, guaranteed. I don't have to think about it. I don't have to worry about it. And I can even make it so you don't know which secondary I have until I start scoring points on it.
And we'll talk about this more in the secondary section because this is a great part of that, but it's actually that Dark Angels can get 45 secondaries on that one objective.
Oh, no, they can. I'm just a minimum, like guaranteed.
Yeah. But you're right, and it's a thing we should talk about a little later. Okay, so that's a little bit about what we've got going on. So let's move on to the Nopen. So do we presume everybody knows what it was? Maybe the high-level synopsis of what the Nopen was, just in case the Venn diagram has some people that don't overlap.
Sure. So Las Vegas Nopen was an online-only kind of streamed RTT with some specials to replace the LVO since it didn't happen. So we had streamers from around the world get together. They submitted lists that they would have taken to the LVO. And then they played them, and the winners in the first round, most of them would send their lists to a different streamer in the second round, and you continue that off until the finals. And it was all the Coronavirus Relief Fund, which is run by Global Giving. It's kind of like an charity. They take in funds for different charities and distribute them to places around the world. It was a really good time for a good cause. And I think on top of it being for charity, it was, for me at least, it was almost more for the community, just giving, during where we're at right now. So.
I really appreciated just having that level of content show up at a weekend, right? It was nice.
Well, and to hit on something here, this was not only like an awesome charity event and this really cool moment for the community to come together, it was an entirely new format of event, which I think is something that, it's awesome to hit on the charity and everything else about it. There's so many positive things about it. But going back to, what this does for the community in the sense of moving online content forward. It was a really groundbreaking way to try and get all of these different content creators to connect. I loved the way you guys did the raffle, so that all of those different content creators were able to have their cross over the viewership, and it really just grew communities, right? And I think that's a huge, that's such a positive net benefit from this event that I think is kind of underestimated. It's just how much people now have new ways to enjoy their hobby and new people to enjoy it with.
So
that was another thing for me when it came to this, was I did want more people to look at more streams. It's actually one of my biggest disappointments that I couldn't bring in more because I wanted to. There were so many streams and podcasts and stuff that I was I need to find a way to get room for these guys, but I've only got 2 weeks to figure it out, and I have no hours to do it, and it just became this it was already a colossal mess of logistics, and it just got worse and worse the more I looked at it. But I think we've worked out, which we'll talk about later, some ways to improve that as well. Anyway.
So what worked best about this new way of doing things? What do you really like about what happened?
I think just the way the community responded was the best part. All of the streamer, the fact that it happened, period, because early on when we were kind of pitching this out there, we first came up with it in mid-December. There was a lot of, I don't know if we knew some would, but everybody we reached out to was pretty much immediate. We can do it, just tell us when. And then it was about, okay, well, can you do your time? Don't worry about it. You just figure it out. We'll wake up at 2 a.m. and stream if you need us to. So that was all really great, and that worked. Everybody having the armies they needed, I did not expect to function. I expected there would be mass proxies and stuff around 2, 3, 4. That didn't happen. which was a big concern of mine because I wanted the armies to look good on stream, and I think for the most part they did. Like even going into the final, I was texting Siegler and John Lennon because they were playing because Art of War was playing the final, and there was a strong possibility it was sisters versus sisters. I was like, do you guys have 20 some odd Repentia lying around? Like, well, we have that. And building and painting them while the semifinals going on, just so that we would have a stream like that fit, and that was an amazing thing to see. But yeah, like the fact that the logistics worked out, that the round 1 games and the round 4 game in particular were great, that there was good stories throughout was great. Like I always want there to be a good story about an event, so having JT's Drukari do so well was amazing. Because like that was something I was worried about. Going into it, I was like, oh, there are people already annoyed about like TJ's Chaos list because they think it's so strong. So that was great to have that story, this underdog kind of make it to the final and almost win. So there was a lot that I was.
Falcon, let me interrupt you for just a second. Your connection is really bad. Is there anything in the Arctic Circle that we actually can do to make your connection better? Is there a reconnecting, or is there anything that we can do? Because it's very hard to understand you.
Yeah, no problem. Let me step away for a second, and okay. I'm going to see if there's anything going on in my house that I can shut off.
Okay.
It was interesting. Talk about a little bit what Peter was talking about. That. So TJ had a very powerful and very interesting chaos list, but it is extremely techy, and you have to know what you're doing with it. So when TJ played it, he obliterated his opponent. But then passing it down the line, he gave it to the next guy, who was a mostly Space Marine focused player. So he was struggling just to survive all of the like a billion powers that are here, and what do all these different tools do, with a very small amount of time to try to catch up to what that list could do. And there was some other lists I saw in there, like from Vanguard Tactics, the Sisters of Battle list, which was very straightforward. And because it had a simpler battle plan, it did better when it passed on to the next person. So there's almost a weird meta in there about making a powerful list, but making it something that is a little more on the intuitive or, easy to pick up and run with side of it, which I thought was it's an interesting meta question for this sort of new format.
Yeah, I had that as one of the things to talk to Peter about a little later in the interview, because you're right, you're 100% right. The lists that did the best aren't the best lists in the game, and that's fascinating. It's a little bit like in the Super Bowl, you don't actually get the 2 best teams that exist because they don't play enough games into each other to have that be statistically viable. So, similarly, you didn't get the 2 best lists in the game in this situation because who played it mattered, what the matchup was mattered, how easy that list was to learn as it went through that mattered. And if we had put the Demicharon list in there, for example, the Demicharon list would have probably failed as soon as it went to somebody who doesn't play Tyranids. Mm-hmm. Just as an example. And I'm not saying that's an S tier list. I mean, we had some testing against AdMech that was unfortunate. But it's the bigger deal there is some lists are just really hard to play. Nobody played White Scars. Like, White Scars is, again, if you didn't have practice reps with it, it wasn't going to necessarily go well. So I think that's a really interesting thing as well about what passed on and what succeeded.
I'm back. I'm not sure I can do much about the internet, but we'll see how this is.
Why don't we leave your video off, Falcon?
Yeah, we'll do that.
Because that's probably the easiest way to help us. And I know what you look like, so. I really want to get like a field reporter picture for people when they don't have audio.
Oh yeah.
Back in the day when the CNN would be like, "We'll go to our reporter in Baghdad," and it would be like just this like picture of him in a suit, like standing in front of a helicopter with a thumb up or like whatever with a microphone, like just some like stock photo. There's a comment here that says best list is subjective. It's the players. I don't. Yes, players matter a lot, but I also think that there are just best lists in the game. I think that there are just
Well, I think it's again about you can't win a game in list construction, but you can lose a game in list construction, and this format introduced more ways to lose a game in list construction.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I agree. That was a concern of ours when we made up the brackets, or when I made up the brackets, was like to make the model logistics work. There were going to be lists that would just carry over to the next round, no matter what, like to their same channel, just to make sure we could do it. So I was of the opinion that this did put the other player at a disadvantage, but there was kind of a hope with the skill of a lot of the players we had that we could kind of soften that, which we didn't. We saw it in like one or two of the games, but for the most part, it was very much like I don't know what to do. TJ's list was the prime example, because that's on paper, like you look at it and it's like, oh, these are just big boys and they're hard to kill, but they're not that hard to kill unless you know what you're doing. And so we saw it immediately with the Space Marine Steve play on tabletop. He just like shoves them forward, and then JT's like, okay, well, everything I have is damage 3, so you're just dead. Let's move on, right? So it's I kind of caught the end of what Chuck was saying. It was very interesting to watch like these easier lists just play so much better because of it.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And so, for the most part, it's a huge success. What we're interested in though is what didn't work.
Well, the push forward of lists didn't work as well as I wanted. But like I said, that was something we knew was going to happen. So we do have plans to fix that. The production side of things worked mostly well, but we're going to take some big tips from the Spanish side of things. Because if anybody tuned into Deep Game Spain for any reason that's listening to this, they were incredible. They did the same thing we did. They basically restreamed our stream and then commentated over it. But like their stuff was so good. And they consistently had between 800 and 900 people watching their stream, just the one stream. And we were streaming for them at like 5 a.m, and it didn't stop. They were still 800 people watching them the whole time. So we're going to take a lot of lessons from them.
I am so excited to check out their streams.
It's just a lot of yelling, a lot of wearing like luchador masks, and like they were really into it. It was really funny to watch. And so Val's doing a lot of work right now with Richard from Art of War, Richard Hughes. And we just got contacted actually by a show producer that watched us. He's done stuff for like Discovery Channel and Netflix, and he's super excited. So we're going to contact him, see what he's able to help us with to just up the production value, up the commentary side. The commentary mostly worked, but I wished it could have been a lot better. And part of that was we approached it as a tournament, and we needed to realize that even though it was a tournament on paper, all of these people were doing battle reports, right? Because that's what all of them do. So they were all explaining every move. It's not like a regular tournament where the guys kind of talk about what they're doing, but they don't explain anything, or they're super silent. Like these are all guys that get, their livelihood is running a stream. So we were really redundant on multiple occasions, right? There was no need for us to commentate over Tabletop Titans when they were on screen. So for us, it's about having like pre-show meetings before every round to go over who we need to focus on if we're running 2 or 3 streams simultaneously, and who we just need to do recaps for if we're going to do this. Because like the Australian stream, they didn't have a commentator. They had like one guy that was doing everything. So we really needed to help them. But we didn't need to help play on Tabletop or Tabletop Titans, because they were talking through literally everything they did and why they did it. So.
Okay. Yeah, we've had a weird we've had an adjacent problem to that with Charity Hammer, right? Where there are games where it's very easy to follow and the players can just talk about it, and then there's games where the players can't at all tell you what's happening. Yeah. And so you have to kind of I had a chance to watch 5 games maybe from Hammer Out Cancer that had commentating, and I thought the was interesting how if you get commentators that know the army's being played, they don't even really need to hear the players. They can figure out they can figure out what's going on their own. But we one of the things that we're going to play with is the idea of jumping back and forth between the player audio and the commentator audio. I really enjoyed that. But again, because there's certain things that like you just don't need commentating for, and there's certain things you don't need the players for.
Yeah, Jason with the Midwestern tournament circuit, they for their streams they try to have at least one commentator that has at least a solid knowledge of each army for that reason, so that they can do a lot of kind of commentating by just observation, I guess is the style that would be.
Yeah, I've watched some of theirs. I'm not a huge fan of it all the time, but sometimes they hit the mark. But that's the same right now, I think, with all commentary. It doesn't always hit the mark. I think Adam Camilleri, I've said it before, is probably the best 40K commentator in terms of game flow and predicting what's going to happen and why it's going to happen. So having him was excellent. He also is
having the
permanent
energy. A small sun helps. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And Paul is really good at filling in space, but I think we need to work a little bit on Paul serving up Adam as part of the commentary to make that work. If you watch the Hammer Out Cancer game with me and Alex McDougall, like that's all I do the whole stream, because like I'm very comfortable commentating. Alex said he wasn't super comfortable, but he knows the army so well. So for me, it was just all I would do is be like, "Hey, Alex, what would you do now?" And then he can just talk, and it was hilarious because like I could kind of make out what the players were saying, and like every time Alex would talk, they were saying the exact same thing. So it was perfect. Like and that's kind of what I want to see more from our commentary is to make sure like we're feeding Adam, or whoever's supposed to be our guy, and then we have Paul act as our play-by-play and storyteller, and I think it'll work better in the future. But that was small. I think for the most part they did an amazing job from the stuff that I was able to watch, because I was handling a million other things. We do need more people in the background is another thing that's going to improve next time. Getting someone that can do social media so I don't have to would be a big boon. So
yeah, that's the same thing with Charity Hammer. How much of this can I delegate?
Yeah.
I also found, I think the connection between when we want to do the players and the commentators and switching back and forth, the person who's watching the stream actually has quite a bit to do.
Yeah.
Yes.
Quite a few things to juggle. So I think as people start to get more experienced with that, through our weekend, we found that like Pickles was picking up a lot of steam about like this is how it should be done.
Oh yeah, like by the end,
it got better and better.
He was incredible.
Yeah.
And for us, we had our table bosses just like typing. Next time, and table bosses were added real late in the game because at first I thought I'd be able to do it with Tony, and then I just couldn't do it because I had so much on the go. I'd bitten off more than I could chew. So the next time we're going to have a lot more prep for our table bosses, and we're probably going to have them be essentially a third commentator is the plan. They're going to be able to, like, whenever we switch cameras, rather than having Adam just like read off a document of what's been happening, which doesn't feel good, it's very robotic, just like cut and be like, "Hey Tony, what's going on?" And Tony can be like, "Yeah, we're just in Brian's movement phase right now. What you guys missed last round, Adrian super whiffed on a charge over here, blah, blah, blah." Give like a brief 2-3 minute rundown, kind of like what I was doing last year at the LVO when they would cut to the tables and I would just explain what's been happening at the table, and then let the commentators talk. So it feels more organic.
Yeah, I think that's great. Okay, well, that's a bunch of our third topic. What are you going to do differently? Is there other stuff that you want to do differently? You're going to do this again. Everybody should just know that.
Yeah, we're going to do it again. If everyone was like, "We hate this, it sucks," maybe not, but the people seem to really enjoy it. So we're going to, despite all of our foibles. So we are doing it again. We're going to change up the way the tournament's handled in one form or another. We're looking at about 3 different options. The easiest one is just round 2 forward. It's a tag team. So it's almost like a remote doubles tournament. So let's say Best in Faction joins us the next time around. You guys do your round 1 game. Chuck destroys Colin opening round, sends his list forward, rather than just being like, okay, JT, you have to figure out how to play Chuck's list. Chuck will like call in to play on tabletop via Skype or something, and walk him through the plays like while he's watching the game, just to even out that matchup. So there's less of this like, I don't know what's going on. What's a keeper's secrets? That should help resolve that.
Also, can instantly ask somebody like questions like, what's the leadership of this model? What's this?
Exactly.
Like, you've got an expert. But additionally, they could say like, so the play here is to push Magnus forward, smite, and then jump back.
And then run away. Yeah. And I saw a little bit of it live. Like Richard Siegler watched the Hellstorm game and at one point was like, oh man, I'd probably win this game easy just by doing this, this, and this. And like while it was happening, I wanted to just like message Hellstorm and be like, let Richard tell Mikey how to play the list because it's fine. But I didn't, because I felt it would be unfair to, all the other guys simultaneously streaming. But it was a lot of these guys got real. Like JT watched every game his list was in and was like constantly. Well, he didn't provide a strategy. He was more like, hey, don't do this because that's cheating. But it would be very easy to make it about strategy instead, right? And so that's the easy way. It's the only ask is making players spend more of their time in being involved, right? So.
And while we're touching on JT, just a quick congratulations to him for the results he got with his Drukhari list. He was on our faction focus for AdMech when we brought in Drukhari players to help analyze AdMech, and yeah, he just killed it. Congrats, dude.
Yeah.
He did a really good interview with Scary and the Real Space Raiders, but Scary in particular. They did like an 1.5 hour long thing on the Nopen and how his list did and why it worked. And it's very interesting listening because it's like they make clear at the beginning, this isn't the best Drukhari list you can play, but it was the best given what JT understood to be how the tournament was going to be run. And it provided some very good insight into his thought process and how he would take that list to LVO and why it would work. So it's a good listen. The other way we might fix it is to do something. Is to do something a little more unique, where we tell the round 1 streams they can submit 1 list, and then we have outsiders or the round like 2, 3, and 4 people submit a list as well to each of them, and then we kind of reverse coach. So Val is really into this on just having everybody, like having all of the lists be sent in remote. I'm not sure if I'm as keen on it, but he was like, we can get like mini wargaming and all these other channels that don't generally stream competitive games to be like, here's a list I'm going to make up and I'm going to make Nick Nanavati run it and just see how they would do with it. I think that's cute, but I think I much prefer this idea to get more streams involved, to be like, hey, Art of War, you guys have probably the most models of anybody. You're only going to do like a round 2 and a round 4 game. But I know people are very interested in knowing what you think would win a tournament. So you get to send a list to Chuck. And you're going to teach Chuck how to play the list in advance, or just you're going to work with Chuck to create the list together, if that's how you want to do it. And then Chuck will play that. Colin gets to make his own list, or Mitch gets to make his own list. And then those 2 lists play. And that way, when it carries forward, when Art of War picks up whoever's list it is, it'll be easier on them because at least one of the lists is theirs already. And because they've been working with you guys, they'll also know what Colin's list is, and it should lead to it's kind of along the same lines of the first way, where it just leads to a better understanding of what they're getting into when they play in that second round and that third round, and it would just allow more people to get involved.
I think you'll get some of that with a little bit more lead time as well. Yeah. We had a bit more lead time on lists and everything for our group. So I was able to sort of read not just the list, but the rules behind everybody's list in my bracket. So I was sort of prepared. And that would help me play it as well, right? You could do that same practice and be like, okay, I'm a little bit more ready to do this.
Yeah. And that's another big thing. Like, we're looking, I'm not going to make any promises, but we're looking at probably late May if we do this again as a like, we're gonna fix this and this is the time to do it. Because Val will tell you on a production side, there was a lot of wasted time relearning stuff we already knew on the production side, stuff that we figured out at LVO, but because we didn't get to do another stream for a year, we forgot. So that doing it again as soon as possible while still giving me a break and everybody else a break is, I think, is key to making this really work. So we're looking at kind of March, and then we might do one more by the end of the year. That's a team tournament, and I'm working on the logistics of that. It looks super fun. I have no idea how we're going to make it function, but it looks like a lot of fun. So that's something to keep an eye on as well.
So two things. You said May and then you said March. Is it one of those?
Oh, it's May. Sorry.
Okay.
End of May.
Because March seems really soon.
Yeah, no, end of May. Like BAO was canceled, so we're looking at probably that as our replacement go-to, which was the 21st, 22nd, 23rd of May. We may do the week after just to give us an extra week, but it would be around that time is kind of the thought process. Gives us 3 months and a little bit to nail down like servers and production side, and then start contacting streamers to see, hey, are you interested in doing it again? Or, hey, are you interested in doing it for the first time? And kind of lining that all up. So
cool. That's great. And then the other question I was going to have is gone. Okay, great. I had a question, and then you were interesting, and now the question's gone. Let's see.
What you've done.
Yeah, you were talking about you were talking about the Nopen and how okay. Do you think that the 4-hour time slots you had for the rounds was the right amount of time? As a fellow organizer, I was wondering about that.
I think for the most part it worked. I probably could have given an extra half hour.
Oh, you think more time was needed?
Yeah, like what we saw was, despite me saying over and over again and creating documents like lining out how we were going to do everything, there were still a few channels that would go over because they're explaining everything, right? They're so used to just having unlimited time. So you would, like, they're answering questions from chat and they're doing their own thing. And I tried to kind of put the hammer down on it a little bit, but I also don't want to take away from people's livings. So it's a balance there. I felt 3 hours was perfect for the amount of time for the game to come to a conclusion. Mm-hmm. There was only a couple games that really went over it when you pay attention to what they were doing the whole game. I think the first round, it was perfect. Round 2, 3, 4, 2 and 3 in particular, I could probably give an extra half an hour to, just because there's going to be one person that doesn't know their list. So it just gives them a little more comfort. That would be my...
Were they 3-hour games? Or are they 3-hour slots? I thought they were 4-hour slots.
They're 4-hour slots, but it was really 3 hours for your game, half an hour for like interviews and wrap up, and then half an hour break for the commentators was really how I was doing it.
Okay.
So it was a 4-hour slot, but it was really just 3 hours for game and then an hour of other stuff. We're probably going to do something similar where there's essentially an hour break in between each round. But one thing that we're already lining up for the next time is a lot of extra content to fill in the gaps. So what we want is, like, the stream will never stop. There's always going to be interviews on the go. We'll just pre-record them. Mm-hmm. Steve Joel's music videos, he wanted to do like 8. So we'll see if maybe we can get a few more out of him, because that My Way thing was incredible. If anyone hasn't seen it yet.
Just wonderful.
And so he has a few more he wants to do, so we'll probably get that involved. But a big thing was interviews, because I wanted way more. I wanted way more interviews. I wanted way more player things, and we just never got to it. We did have all the players do like little list intros. Some of them were good. Some of them were very bad. And so that's something I also need to get a better handle on, especially the Australians, because they're all over the place. The Australians are crazy, and it's like playing telephone, because I had to go through Adam for all of it. So next time there's going to be a direct line to those guys.
But do you speak the same language?
No, they have some weird, like, I don't know, mongrel thing they do when they talk to each other, but a series of clicks. I'll figure it out.
Okay. Well, the reason I asked is that we had a weird... So, Charity Hammer, we try to make sure that there's always something happening.
Yeah.
And we had a problem at Hammer Out Cancer that because of ninth edition, a lot of games don't take a lot of time.
Hmm.
We had games over in an hour that all 5 turns were played that were over in an hour, which in eighth
Yeah.
edition was even you had to table someone to end a game in an hour. Period in eighth edition. So uh, one of the things we've been talking about is how do we fill the time between games, which is why I asked. But one of the things I was thinking about is exactly what you said. Have each of the sponsors involved create content, even if you don't want to create it
Yeah.
yourself. Have everybody else create content and then just slot it in. But I also think there's a lot of lifestyle 40K stuff that people are interested in, and
Oh yeah.
I was thinking for Charity Hammer that we might just put cameras in other places that we switch on. So that if a game's not going and you don't know what's happening, you're literally watching some of the best players in the world run around with their armies like crazy potatoes trying to get to the tables in time. You're watching terrain
Yeah.
move, like you're seeing the chaos of Charity Hammer.
Yeah, behind the scenes kind of.
Yeah.
I think that's an incredible idea. I like that. And another thing that we don't do because we often get too focused on the competition, the game side,
Mm-hmm.
um, is the hobby side. You could always just have a camera in a room with people painting,
Yep.
and you could cut to that, and they could just talk about what they're painting because so many people are into that. Like they
Uh-huh.
just want to watch paint and how you do it, and seeing these guys do that, it's just another layer, another thing you could do. When we were setting this up, I was directed to this like social media guy for like conventions, and he was like, "Oh, the first thing you need to do is get a painting stream because you'll get like 2,000 more viewers immediately." And I
Oh.
was like, "Well, I don't want to do that." But like it was sound theory. It was just like I'm just trying to run a tournament, dude. I don't have time to figure this part out. So
Space
Well,
to
you
grow
know,
into.
we could do that though, Falcon, and
yeah,
we have enough people coming that people would want to chat with while they're painting, and the people coming to Charity Hammer that don't see each other very often might want to paint next to each other. So that's an interesting idea for us more than your
oh wait,
format,
that's why I brought it up because I don't do it, but you should.
right? Exactly.
I don't want to do it. I just want to see it.
The other thing, and I have a real bad insomnia this week, so I spent a few late night hours researching this. I believe I found a way for Gus to have a camera on him, on his collar, and
So the motion sickness cam. Got
that's
it.
going to Wi-Fi.
Very friendly motion sickness.
And my thought was that people might enjoy if on stream one in the bottom right hand corner there was a camera that's just what is Gus currently doing, because people
Oh yeah.
play. For those that don't know, here's Gus. Gus is a 100-pound lab, and he's very friendly, and he's a big part of Charity Hammer. I think he's a big part of Charity Hammer because everybody plays with him. So my thought was, basically what you'd be watching Nick and John or whoever playing, and in the corner you'd see Richard Siegler running around in the yard with a ball and Gusta, right? Like I think that there's some charm to that. That
Or
is
we can watch him
wonderful.
shunning Adam.
Yes, or we'll watch him actively avoid being within 10 feet of Adam Camilleri. Because that is the only person Gus has ever met that he does not enjoy.
Doesn't trust the Australians.
No. We were going to talk for the final topic on the Nopen about what we saw differently from a normal tournament with what list did well, but we kind of talked about it while Falcon was having connectivity issues. It's really the how hard a list is to learn and how many reps it takes to play it well, and who the players are matters a lot for the Nopen. And in fact, when I was predicting my bracket, I struggled hard because I don't. If all the lists are good enough, then I'm with a lot. Then it's really about the player.
Mm-hmm.
So like, it was very hard to predict. But I'm wondering, is there anything else that we learned about the lists that we wouldn't have learned in a normal tournament, other than how hard they are to use? Is there any other big takeaways there?
I think the other little piece of that that's interesting. It's along the same lines, but it's still interesting. The lists that did well in the Nopen are lists that, if you are interested in joining that faction, are a good place to start.
Oh
Whereas
yeah,
often the top lists in a meta are not the best place to start.
yeah.
But like again, if you saw a list be easily taken by another person and played, and then another person and played, and they were able to do that each time, that's going to be a good entry point for you. And then you can grow into these more complicated lists later. But like that's, I think, something it provides that's different.
I think we also learned that Drukari have a lot more toolboxiness than I think people were really giving them credit for, just on surface and level analysis.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
play the mission super good. So
Yeah, but like I think that this event really highlighted like, yeah, if you can play the mission really good, you've always got a game. Period.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was big for the Drukari. I liked Tank's list because it was simple until it wasn't. Like really, his strategy was what wasn't simple about it, right? Because he was taking while we stand, we fight, and then shoving all his while we stand, we fight models in front of the enemy turn one, and being like, "Here you go." But it just worked because it was such a straightforward list, and it worked so well. I really enjoyed that. This kind of like backwards strategy that just did the job.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. Anything else you want to say about the Nopen?
That's it. I mean, I'm super thankful for everybody that watched, thankful for everybody that participated, that made it as easy as it could have been. There were a lot of things behind the scenes that made it quite a little stressful bubble because of COVID, but we managed to break through them all. And I'm really hopeful we can catch magic in a bottle a second time in however many months it takes to get the next one off the ground.
All right, great. Okay. So what we're going to do now is we're going to move on to Mitch's topic, contests versus competitions. And I think this is Mitch explaining it to us, and then the rest of us interviewing Mitch about it and seeing what we kind of trying to understand the topic
Sure.
the way Mitch does.
I mean,
so go for it, Mitch.
So, I regularly like to listen to audiobooks that are about understanding yourself better and game theory and psychology, all these different topics that in the end do tie back to 40K, but they're more just about personal growth in general. And something I came across while I was researching some of this stuff was the concept of competition versus contest, and it comes up in play theory. So play theory is what do human beings do for fun, right? What do we do in form of play? Obviously, dogs play, cats play. Most mammals have some, that have any sort of, social dynamic, have some form of play. It's a way that knowledge is passed on and bonding happens, but it also serves as a release and a sign of like being able to have a functional social balance, right? So, and the question that came up that I found so interesting in this research is competition play? And so the easy answer is, well, you see two dogs wrestling and they're not hurting each other. Are they competing? Well, the answer that the researcher put forth was no, they aren't actually competing, they're contesting. And the difference between contest and competition, as they put it, was that if you see a 20-pound, little tiny dog wrestling with a dog Gus's size and they're pulling back and forth, well, obviously the larger dog at any point can win that scenario. So it's not a competition because the larger dog is not trying to win. It's a contest. He's allowing the smaller dog to get the exact same amount of sensation of participating in that form of play. And I started thinking about this and how it applied to our community in Warhammer 40K. And I thought it was really interesting because I think that, obviously we have these terms: competitive player, casual player, narrative, fluff bunny, win at all costs. We have all of these different terms for language, but most of them kind of say the exact same thing, and they don't necessarily communicate what the other person is trying to, or what that person is trying to get out of the game as a form of play. Because obviously it's our hobby; we're doing it because we enjoy it. So, putting it more into the context of competition and contest made a lot of sense to me. So what I'm talking about is, I think that there are a lot of players who, not just in the narrative or more like league-oriented community, but in the competitive scene, there are a lot of players who really just want a good contest. They want to have a good game. They want to feel like they are in that game and that they are participating and have a chance to win it. And then whether or not they win, or they're not trying to win the tournament, they just want that contest feeling. They are coming there as a form of play and looking to experience a fun, fair, in their mind, match. And I think that having better language in our community to express what you're looking for to get out of a game can be really useful for setting expectations at the beginning in the pregame talk or anything like that. So if, for example, you are the type of person who's I'm not going to win the tournament. I'm bringing these models. I just painted them up. I'm excited about them. You know that you're there for a contest. You just want to have a good time and make sure you feel like you're able to participate and use those cool new toys you painted up. Nothing wrong with that. Now, if we step over to the competitive side, competition is not necessarily a form of play. It can be recreational and it can be enjoyable, but it is not about everyone necessarily having a good time. It's about winning. It has a different objective. So if you're going to a tournament to compete, it's all about win, lose, what the score is, how pushing yourself that furthest limit, and that can be fun, and it's certainly a valid form of recreation. But it is an entirely different expectation than the people coming for contests. And I think that being able to have that conversation of, oh, okay, you're looking to be competitive, you're looking for more of a contest. I can understand what's important to my opponent and make sure I'm hitting those notes in so far as like, okay, he wants to make sure he gets to use that unit. Is that unit going to, I already feel comfortable in this matchup. Is that unit going to be a problem for me? Not really. Cool. Let's make sure he gets a good charge off or he has something to sink that unit into so he at least can feel like he got to use it before I wipe it off the board. That kind of thing can be the difference of someone having a good game and a bad game. So that's the basic theory, and I just think it's an interesting topic to discuss and a different way to see the expectations we have going into games.
Yeah, I will say that lack of communication is what makes me a tournament player, because I don't like the feeling of being a competitor going into a game with somebody who wants the contest.
Mm-hmm.
And like I go all the way, right? And I push really hard, and I ruined the experience for them, and I didn't really get much out of it either, right? It just creates this scenario where we both traveled to a place, we both put all our minis on the table, something happened, everything got wrecked, and then we're done, and then we go home, and like that's a big gap of lost time.
Yep.
And so it's I know I've over time I just play in tournaments more and more only because it's kind of like I know that at least we're in agreement that this is the path.
I have a good friend that isn't a competitive 40k player, but is a very enthusiastic 40k player. He has all the armies; they're all painted. He's been playing for 20 years. He works in the industry, and we had never played, and we agreed to have him come over for a game. And he came over, and he brought Tau, and he said he brought a really smash mouth list. So I played a tournament list into him, and I tabled him in 2 turns. Well, we had been waiting months to play, right? Like,
yeah.
That was a terrible experience, and it completely came down to there was a communication issue. He didn't know what my level of play actually is like because he doesn't play in tournaments, right? He didn't understand that basically if you go 4-1 in a tournament in a GT, you are going to wreck anyone who doesn't go to tournaments, right? There's a tier there that happens when you start going to tournaments. And it was because we didn't communicate well. If he had said, I just want to have a good game, here's what I'm bringing, I would have then talked to my friends and come up with something that is more comparable of a matchup. But we didn't know that's the conversation that needed to happen. So that resonates with me strongly, for sure. Falcon, what do you think of this topic?
It's something that I've dealt with since moving to where I live now. Most of the players here are mostly casual. Sometimes they add a bit of a competitive element to it. Just before COVID, actually, they wanted to run a tournament. They were very keen on doing like a little RTT or GT up here, because we have a comic book convention that happens in the area, and they were like, and we've had 10, 15 people show up to play just like one-off 40k games. So they asked me to start setting it up, and they were asking me all these questions about tournament play, and they wanted to practice into tournament lists. And it was kind of an eye-opener for most of them, because I would say, sure, I can bring a tournament list, but like, are you sure you're ready for it? And he's like, oh yeah. And I remember several times walking into games and just like destroying them and feeling real bad the entire time. So I definitely get it. And when I have had the chance to play up here, I always play with it in mind. Like I tone down the lists to the nth degree every time. Like I'll have like one thing I want to test out that I think is competitive, and then basically the rest of the list is hodgepodge from my kit, right? Just to keep it interesting. But yeah, I definitely feel it. I see it when I go to big events even, right? Because there's always that kind of first and second round at a major or super major where there's people there that are just like, I think this is going to be super fun. And then they have to play into, I don't know, a Steve Pamprine or a, like any one of top competitors, and just get steamrolled, and you see like the light go out of their eyes for a minute. And then you just have to hope that round 3 game is a little more exciting for them once they get to that place where they're at like their skill level. And it does suck. And I don't know how you balance it in competitive play to smooth that out, right? Like it's just a thing.
I mean, so personally, I think that like putting a little thought into this, I think that there should be I would advocate for people who play a lot of competitive 40K that you need to have a different attitude, at least at the RTT level. So if you run into someone who's clearly there for again, contest, not competition, like it's an RTT. They have given up their Saturday or Sunday too. Make sure they have a good game, right? Like you can still like if you don't feel like it's that threatening of a list, then you should be able to give them a good game and win. Maybe you lose some points because of it, but that's that it's going to keep.
That, Mitch, I came to win that RTT, and particularly with an RTT with only 3 games and how like you probably won't finish, right? There'll be several 3-0s.
Yeah,
those points make the difference, right? So it's just I don't know. There's a weird.
Well, I think again facilitating the conversation of if you know that you're not there to win the tournament. If you know that that's not what's going to make you happy that having good games is, then you should be bringing an attitude to try and get your opponent to engage with that. That hey, let's have a good time. We're gonna and understand if you get paired up with a competitive player and they say, hey, I brought this list. I'm practicing for X major that I go to in 3 weeks. Expect them to go hard because that's what they need to do. But again, I think just acknowledging what your expectation is in a way that you can communicate, like at least like to me feels a lot better than just he was a fluff bunny and I blew him off the table. Like it's like, okay, cool. Nah, he was there to play the models he wanted to play, and that's how he chooses to have fun. He's there for a contest, not to compete. He's not a competitor.
Yeah, right? and I know this is something we've talked about a lot on the show because it's really important that everybody has a good time. I am never going to take it easy on you. I'm just not going to. I want to win the tournament, and you cannot win the tournament going easy on people. You just can't, because of exactly what Chuck said. If the tournament has a truly undefeated person, you can do it with any points, but that's incredibly rare. The game itself is actually designed to screw that person in that situation, because points matter a ton, and the concession rules have been a train wreck the whole time I've been playing competitive 40K. 8th and now 9th. Actually, I don't even know what they are right now. But in 8th, they were terrible for the person that's just there to have fun. Who on turn 2 says, well, this isn't going to work out. Let's just hang out and get a beer. Well, we can't, because if I concede, I'll get 0 points, and points matter. So I think that the other part of this, though, is how do you help that person have a good time? How do you make it a positive experience for that person while you're kicking their teeth in? And I think the communication that Mitch is talking about helps out a lot. I've had people come up to me at a table and say, hey, I know you're going to beat me. Can we have fun? Well, we can have fun either way, right? Like, but it's helpful to say that, right? Like, if you think that you are in a massive mismatch and you just want it to be fun, don't expect that competitive player that's there to win that major tournament to go easy on you, because they shouldn't, frankly. If it's an RTT and it doesn't matter who wins, that's a different thing. But like if you're at a GT or a major, don't ask that competitive player to go easy on you. That's not fair to them for their goals. That said, they don't need to be a dick. They should let you have take backs. Like, they should be a friendly person to play. This is something that early in Double Spear Yunari I was terrible about, by the way. Like, I had a very
So
bad time with beating people that weren't having a good time, and I had to really work on what do I have to do at the table to make this as fun as possible for my opponent. Go ahead, Mitch.
so this goes to the second part of this concept that I think is important, which is, okay, you're a competitive player. You've shown up with your most hard-nosed list. It's a 5-round GT. You're ready to rock and roll. You get paired against your one hard counter round one. You are now 0-1.
Mm-hmm.
And you have no shot of winning this tournament. You might be able to place third. You got a shot at sportsmanship. When do you start shifting your mindset and go, okay, you know what? This is no longer a competitive tournament for me. This is a contest tournament for me. I am here to extract as much fun for me and my opponents as possible. Because I am, while I'm a competitively minded player, I'm going to keep playing my games, well. I now know that I'm not going to place. Dropping is silly. I mean, unless you have something better to do.
Right.
Why not shift your goal to be like, cool, I want to get, I want to be in the running for best sportsman, and that's my new goal. Like shifting your goals based on having unexpected or losses or outcomes at tournaments, I think, is another great way for competitively minded players to practice kind of not switching off that competitive mindset, but controlling it, dialing it back when it's like, okay, cool, look, I ended up pairing into someone else who beat me because this list didn't work as well as I thought. Now I'm 0-2. I definitely need to know how to have fun at that point. So
what happens for me in that if they lose that first game, particularly if it's an RTT, like there's no chance, right? The following games turn into practice games, where I am attempting to help my opponent play their army into my army the best that they possibly can, to give me the most growth, to help me improve. And generally, people seem to be very positive and interested in that because I think it helps them grow as well, right? Like they get a good vision of things, and that fits my personality pretty well, so it feels comfortable. The other way that will end up going is something larger, like say LVO, where it doesn't change a thing. I just go hard again. Because what I'm doing there is I'm not trying to win LVO. I'm trying to get the best score I can at LVO. And so nothing changed. Other than maybe I'm a little rattled. But
right. But the thing is, you should be able to have fun while losing. And that's something that is hard for me. Less hard for Mitch, even less hard for Chuck. Like that is a very different thing that different people have to handle in different ways. I had a great time playing Zach on Friday and lost a game to him, and someone gave me feedback that seemed like said that they felt like I was getting a little salty. That's the sort of feedback I need because I wasn't salty at all. I was having a great time and I didn't care if I won that game. So like that means that my persona in that game was bad, right? Because I was losing and for whatever reason I came across that way. That can't be a thing in competitive 40K if you want everybody to be treated with respect and kindness. You can't be even being perceived as a dick while you're losing is something you have to watch out for. So I'm all for the language for this, and I'm all for the communication. I think Mitch's point is great because if someone came up to the table and told me this is what I'm expecting from this game, that's no different than, what was it, Mitch, when we talked about the before game contract of the things you and I both say at every game? That's like episode 3.
Your pregame pattern.
Yeah, hey, I roll everything flat. I'll re-roll anything that's not flat, and it's very important to me that you have a good time. There are these things that we say, and I can't ask you if you are there to try to kick my teeth in. I can't ask you that. So if you're at that table and you think there's a skill mismatch or an army mismatch and you want me to keep that in mind, you need to say something, and there's no shame in that.
I was just thinking about what you were talking about with the Yunari, and something that I learned playing Orcs. I think it's, in a lot of cases when we're doing the contest, it's about participation. And Yunari did not allow participation.
Uh-huh.
They were hidden.
Uh-huh.
They came out. They wrecked large portions of your army, and they went back into hiding.
Uh-huh.
And so the other player is just standing around, being like, "Well, what do I do next?" Trying to figure out complicated measures of like, how can I prevent you from doing that again? I played an Orc Death Star for a while in sevens. It was abusive and gross, and I won best sportsmanship with it because there was a lot of stuff that got shot into the opponent's army every turn, and they got to blow stuff up. So they were still
Orc players have
taking
it so
part.
lucky. You get to just like scoop off models with like a dustpan, so people
Yeah.
feel good about it.
Mhm.
Yeah,
You can kill all the models except for these 30, which all have a 2-up save.
yeah.
That's the rules. But like it's very different, right? And like I find that over time, like, if your army is built to interact when it's winning, people are more comfortable. The contest players are doing something. That's what they're there for, is to do something. The real bad feeling comes from when they don't get to do anything at all, which I think, Colin, you went into the deep end being somebody who struggles with making that happen, but also playing an army that really, really struggles to make it like a fun game.
And White Scars isn't better about that because
Mm-mm.
while White Scars doesn't go back into hiding as often, White Scars can hide the whole game because there's no vehicles or anything, right? And also, what I found is that in a lot of my games, I didn't lose anything, right? Like,
Or the apothecary put it back.
right, the game would be over, and I'd have, I lost 5 Vanguard vets that entire game. That's not nobody needs that. Whereas Sisters, which I actually think if we're just doing take all comers comparisons, Sisters might have the edge on White Scars. They're both hanging out in the S tier, so whatever. But my point is that Sisters have so much fragile stuff that Melty unit comes out and it kills the important thing. Well, then that Melty unit dies. And I think that that's a much better experience for your opponent. So the difference that, like Genestealer Occult, I never got nearly as many complaints when I was winning with, because you got to kill half my army every game, even if I was winning. So I think there's a nuance to that for sure. All right, Mitch, what else on this?
Honestly, that's the main thing. Is just it's something I wanted to put out there, to our listeners as something, maybe to try and start using in your language of like, hey, I'm more of a contest player. I like to just feel like I'm in the game, and that's really, if that's who you are, and don't try and be the competitive like hard-nosed guy if that's not what makes you happy in the hobby. And I think the last thing I'd want to hit on, there are some inherent like kind of negative associations to the terms like flush or fluff bunny, casual, like these different terms can be used in a harsh way, and that's why I like the competition terminology. It's not because neither of them come off there's no inequality kind of in that language of, if you're a competition player, cool. If you're a contest player, cool. That was kind of the only last thing I would say is the idea is we want language that just helps people be able to communicate what the funnest experience they can have and how they can get there. And any way we can move that forward so that we're able to express that more clearly is just going to result in better times all around for everyone playing.
In general, you shouldn't use terms that are derogatory to others.
Well, agreed.
Right? So, but I think that that's a world thing right now, right? Like, by the way, my kids calling my wife and I boomer is obnoxious. Just as a side note. But there's all these things that are just people call each other in the world that are just perceived as these things that we call people. Snowflake, libtard, there's lots of them. To me, casual is that. Like, the people that play 40k casually don't call themselves that, which means it's not an okay term. Like, I think that if Mitch's contest versus competition vocab catches on, that'd be great. But we need words that aren't derogatory, because guess what? It's tiny soldiers, and my ability to beat that person does not change my value or their value as a human being. So we need to have good language about that. Falcon unmuted himself. Do you have something for us, Falcon?
No, I'm just listening, man. It's an interesting conversation. Language is very powerful.
Yes.
It always is and always will be. And I think the one thing that you need to do in this game is we don't need to avoid it so much as make sure we're careful about how we present it. Like when I'm playing a game against somebody and they're kicking my teeth in, if I'm have it, as long as their attitude is good, I don't give a shit. When Rich Kilton absolutely laid me out a couple of years back at a tournament, I did not care. I was having the time of my life because he's a great guy. Like 2 games later, I was playing another dude who was laying me out. I was not having fun because he was super quiet. There was no conversation. I was just getting my teeth kicked in, and no matter how many jokes I could tell, it didn't matter. Um, so it just sometimes it's not just about the list and about making them feel good on the table. Just you can just make them feel good as a human being and actually acknowledge that they exist. And often that's all you need to do.
I just realized that we missed a comment about TJ's Chaos list being S tier. And that was a great opportunity for me to trash Chaos and explain how they don't get to have S tier, and I missed it entirely. Speaking of being derogatory.
So what you're saying is the Chaos snuck in and got a win on you. Great, moving on.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, they did. They got a win, and that's fine. I think what Falcon's saying is absolutely right. And you know, if the words that you're using to talk to someone, if they fit well with dirty in front of them, you've done something wrong. Like you, dirty casuals. That means casuals probably not okay. Like you have to really watch your language. Just if you want to get along with people. Okay. So and I would love it if their Chaos has an S tier list. Just so we're clear. I'm highly skeptical of such things. Okay. So, do we move on to the next topic, or do we talk more about this? Anybody else have anything more to talk about this?
We've covered it really well.
Okay.
At this point, we're going to start getting preachy.
Oh, okay. Fair enough. All right. Next up is a question that people have asked me to ask you guys regularly. And so I'm going to start asking it every few episodes. And it is, you have unlimited hobby time this week, and you can get whatever army you want, but LVO is next weekend. What are you taking? Chuck, you go first.
Imperial Guard, full payload mana cores with a whole bunch of Sisters Close Combat.
And why?
I'm really happy playing it. The flexibility, the ability to improvise a new plan halfway through a game with all the miracle dice and such is great. And I always gravitate to an army that has a core of shooting that often I love it when it's line of sight ignoring shooting.
Yeah, right.
And then some ability to close combat, because I want to edit my opponent's army while I engage in combat at the middle of the table in order to win the game. That is my natural Warhammer state, and I feel like it fits it perfectly. So, plus then I wouldn't have all this hobby that's sitting over here on this desk staring at me saying that we need to be painted.
Okay. Mitch.
I'd probably go with the 2 Majera with a Warglaive, and then the 2 full payload mana cores and like 150 conscripts.
Nice.
All fearless with the commissar that can give them orders without having to roll.
I'm going to go out on a limb that list sounds awesome, and there's no way it's 2,000 points. 150 conscripts with 2 mana cores and 2 Mageras? Yeah. That's probably too much.
Well, so conscripts are what, like 5 points each now, so it's 150 per 30. So I can go 120 at least. 120.
Yeah, okay. But I think that sounds great and super Mitch. So I think that's a wonderful answer. I support you. Falcon. Dark Angels, yeah?
Yeah, Dark Angels for sure. Screw them. I'm going oops all dreadnoughts, Custodes. Woo, woo. Get on that train.
Yeah.
Love it. Start with 0 CP. Win the game by just being fucking annoying. I love it. It's not good, but it sure is fun. It's super fun.
And I will say that I struggled with this answer. The dogs are all howling. Stephanie has left the house. I struggled with this answer. I don't actually know. So what I'm going to do, I do actually have an idea of what it is. So instead, I'm going to do it this way. Chuck, what am I taking?
Oh, you're taking Dimacarians with Trogdor.
I think so too.
I think that is your happy weekend.
Yeah, right.
And you still have a good chance at winning that tournament.
Yeah, well, it's LVO in this example, but
Oh well, then you have a good chance of doing well.
no,
If it's LVO, I assume we have some sort of infinitely great transportation option,
yes,
because otherwise Trogdor is not a great idea.
Trogdor is magnetized for reasons.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, I think that the thing about the Tyranids is I'm having a great time playing them, and they only are really a problem on light if you don't have really if you have normal or less than normal terrain, and you go second against a couple armies, it's a problem. But other than that, they're absolutely competitive, and I probably would take them because everybody locally is playing White Scars. So maybe I don't know. White Scars would be the other thing I would decide between. I'm enjoying Dark Angels, but they're not. I don't want to play 6 games of Dark Angels or 9 games potentially of Dark Angels. I'm not interested in that. I would get bored. So
Hmm.
I think Dark Angels win button is significantly easier than the White Scars win button. I think that it is the Dark Angels aren't super easy to play, especially into a good opponent in a hard matchup. But I think that they're just easier to win with and harder to and have probably a little bit of a lower ceiling would be my guess.
I feel like the amount by which they default start winning the game is higher. So it takes a more competent player to put you in a bad position.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
And that
agree.
makes
They
that
just
means
have,
more of your games are boring.
they have too many tools that are just so good,
They are.
so good.
Yeah. And good for them. When's the last time they were good?
6th edition, kind of, when you could pair them up with a bunch of other stuff.
We're
That's
good in
a,
7th with the formations and stuff.
that's a
I
long
played
time
them
ago.
in tournaments, and I want to say third or fourth, and that's what I would say the last time they were actually good,
Well, I mean,
much less
7th. Sorry,
not serviceable.
I was wrong about 6th. It was 7th. 7th when they could do the Demi Company, they were okay.
And then their Talon Masters could hit and run and do all kinds of fun stuff. They were decent.
They were decent.
Okay. Now we're going to talk about 9th edition secondaries. We're going to go
All
through
right.
them. We don't need to all talk about every secondary. We don't have time for that. But we're going to go through these and talk about what we think of them as a group. And the idea behind this is Zach made a comment on Friday when we played, which I thought was great. He said, I find that every time I'm in a difficult matchup, I say, I should go look at the secondaries. And then I go look at them, and I say, no, I still don't like these. Like, every time he goes and looks at the book to try to figure out the last one he's going to take, he can't figure it out. And we've talked about the fact that the secondaries shouldn't be you get 45 every game. That's what ITC was last season.
Yeah.
You max secondaries every game. I don't think anybody on this pod. I just want to set expectations for this conversation. I don't think anybody here thinks that that's the way the format should be. The secondaries, you should have an easy one, a moderate one, and a hard one. I would say in most matchups, right? So it's okay if the third one is hard to pick, unless other people get 45 every game, and we'll talk about the Marine and other specific ones after we talk through the normal ones. Okay, everybody on the same page?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And I love that they're different categories, by the way. I think that is a stroke of genius, so that I'm not just taking, engage on all fronts and domination and line breaker in the same game, because, like, you could make an army that just does those things. So the first one is engage on all fronts, which I think, for me, is the most common secondary. Do you guys
I
think?
think it's the most common period. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say I can say that's across the board.
Yeah.
Everything I watch, it's in every game.
I think statistically it's taken in 60% of games right now. So
And I think that sounds low, Peter.
that's 60% would mean that at least one of the two players took it, because that's consideration of like everybody.
Oh,
So
good point.
it would essentially be in every game.
And some people
Yeah.
can't do it. So
Yeah.
basically, the middle of the table is really important, and if you're already headed to the middle of the table, it's very easy to spread out from that and get recon. Armies that are succeeding tend to be faster. Deep strike is a big part of the mechanics right now, especially because of scramblers, which we'll talk about later. Lots of fast armies want to do recon. It's rare, though, that I get 15 on it. I take it every
Yep.
game. I don't normally get 15 from it.
One of the things that I think is really interesting about it is the fact that it's very easy to exist in two quarters, right? And so often it's a stretch. You're often throwing a unit away to exist in a third one. If they changed it so it was 1 point for being in 3 and 3 points for being in all 4, I think it would be a lot less popular. Because I take it often as this is going to be a 10 point that has the chance of, going up a little bit. And I think that's a big part of its popularity is that it, I don't know, it's secondary, like its easy mode is still worth quite a few points.
Yeah, I agree with that. And honestly, we took recon all the time too, right?
Yep.
So, line
you get
breaker.
to control it.
So line breaker is the end of your turn, and you need 2 units from your army that are not aircraft wholly within your opponent's deployment zone. It's good that it's not your next turn, right? It's good that it's not beginning of command phase or end of battle round. It's good that it's your turn, but I have still not ever taken this.
I think if I play into your Dark Angels, it'll probably be one of the first times I've gotten to take it. And other armies like that want to exist in one particular location. If you have some cheap troop units that you can just spend a CP and throw them in reserve, and they could just walk out into your opponent's deployment zone and then step in there and they start getting 4 points. That's 12 points.
Yeah,
right there.
Scions love this secondary.
Yeah, and I think it's the kind of thing that you have to build into your list, or at least understand how your list can do it, and then look for the opponent's army that can't do anything about it. And then the problem is, this same scenario comes up with Deploy Scramblers. It's like the same set of thinking, except for Deploy Scramblers and Engage can be taken together.
Yeah, that's Linebreaker to me is a useless secondary because if you can do Linebreaker, you can do Engage.
Do Engage. Yep.
And Engage is better because you're more likely to get more points. Because Linebreaker, if you use Deep Strike to get it, like you guys were suggesting, that's only 8 points because you're only going to do it on turn 2 and turn 3. So you need to get something over there on an additional turn to make it a 12. A 12 on Engage is pretty straightforward. 15 on Engage is hard. 12 on Engage is pretty straightforward. So Engage is just better than Linebreaker in my mind. The one that I think is more interesting in Battlefield Supremacy that I don't take enough and probably should, I think there's lots of situations where you want Domination and not Engage. So Domination is you hold more than half of the objectives at the end of your turn, right?
Yep.
Yes. And I think if there's a lot of missions that are 5 objectives and one's in the middle, and you already know that your game plan, if you know that your game plan is taking that middle objective, this is better than Engage then.
Yeah, and if it's not, then what is your plan? And it's probably Engage, right? You're either fighting over that middle one to take more objectives so your opponent doesn't give you 15 every turn, or you're spreading out and taking the table. So they just naturally fit, right?
And I'll point out that this one's also hard to get 15 on because you have to do it all 5 turns to do it. So all of these in the basically board control section are all relatively hard to get 15 on, I'd say. Relatively challenging. Comments about any of those?
No.
I think
comment.
Engage and Domination are the 2 that you should be thinking about when you're making your army.
Okay. No mercy, no respite. First up is Thin Their Ranks. Man, remember how often we took Reaper in 8th edition?
Yeah.
Like all the time. I don't take Thin the Ranks.
The math is a little different there than it was on Reaper. Reaper was punishing. It's in the ranks, even with like an orc army that's giving up those points. It's like, sure, you can have it. You'll get 11.
The other thing is that even Horde armies don't have 150 models a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Right? Like, go ahead.
And if you're aware that you're a Horde army and you can take vehicles that don't count, in addition to that, like orc boys and buggies, you can make it so that you don't count, right? Like it's pretty easy.
I think Falcon was trying to say something about this one.
Oh
no, Chuck said what I was going to say. So
okay.
Ruined it.
Yeah, it's too easy to play around. So
yeah, I agree. The next one in No Mercy, No Respite is Grind Them Down, which is kill more, and it's end of battle round and it's 3 points a round. And I've started taking this more because the Trogdor list only has 9 drops.
Yeah.
And so the idea, turn 1 Trogdor is going to shoot something. And then after that, I just have to try to get, like, again, I'm not going to get 15, but there's lots of matchups where you just need to compare drop count. Right?
Yeah.
Like, how many things do you have? Now, I don't get to take from this section very often because Oath of Moment is actually in this section. So whenever I'm playing Space Marines, I have to say, do I want Oath of Moment or do I want one of these? We'll talk about that at the end. But
You just like have to decide if one of those can score more than 15 points.
yeah, exactly. Can I
That's
get
it.
20 from one of these other ones? So I think Grind Them Down is a gem, is a hidden gem that people aren't taking and they should. You don't want to take it in every game, but like Knights should take it every game. If you're playing Monster Mash, that Chaos Monster Mash probably should take it, right, Chuck? The Keepers and
Depends on your
Magnus.
count, but yes.
Okay.
Often, yeah.
So that's one where you can know that you're probably going to end up taking it at list design, and that's a big part of 9th edition is making an army that can do a certain number of these secondaries based on your list more than based on what your opponent's doing.
Yeah, I think that's because you have to be in that scenario where you have a small number of very durable drops. And even then, I think you're looking at 9 to 12 off of it.
Which is,
Just
frankly, I'm
the
fine.
way the game flow goes, yeah.
Yeah, okay, so the next one I think is the big topic, which is when we stand, we fight. Which is what are my 3 most expensive things? For each of those, if you don't kill them, I get 5 points per each of them. I'm not going to go first on this one. Someone else go first.
Well, I would say when it was characters, right? When it was particular models, it was very, very different. Recently changed to the most expensive units. So it's an entirely new item on the table, right? Like I've done some experiments with it. It is not as worthwhile to build around, but you still want to know what those 3 units are and whether you can remove them from your game plan or not to some degree, or if your opponent can even bother touching them at some point, so that you know in some games it's worth taking this.
I think it.
Go ahead.
Like, it really boosted that possessed list that we saw at Nopen. It made it ridiculous. Like the change to it, I think, has made it like it's like you said, it's completely changed what it does and how you have to play into it. Before it was, well, can I pick 3 characters that I can just hide all game and score my 15 or at least 10? But now it's like I got to get some big boys and what's survivable in my army that can do that. So like Custodes have a chance with it. Possessed, but it's a much different secondary than it used to be. You're right.
So I would also say that there are definitely, like, it plays to some interesting archetypes. Custodes definitely like have some ways that they can use this. There's also the idea of, okay, there are units that I can kind of inflate the cost because I can make them really big units. So they're technically my most expensive, but they're just a horde, and their power level is very low. So I can outflank those units or deep strike them or whatever, and kill off the majority. And my focus is to kill off the majority of the firepower that can really deal with those units in time for it to matter. So there's a few interesting plays there. It's really interesting when you look at like Sisters. It can be very easy for Celestine to be one of those units, and so you can kind of like, you take Celestine and maybe a couple, another expensive character, and an Exorcist are your 3 most expensive things. Well, maybe that works for your build. Maybe it doesn't. There's some interesting play there.
I think one of the places I know in playing Chaos Armies, I don't think people take it enough against me, because Chaos is coming at you in a linear fashion. It's smiting at you. It's charging what you put up in front. So if you have, like, if your 3 most expensive units are shooting units, you should absolutely just take While We Stand, We Fight, because just not ever going to get to them. I have to stop at the objectives, not go past them. And if I do, it's still you're saying, well, if you table me, I lose 15 points. But like, well, I tabled you, it's done anyway, right? So it's like free 15 points. So you need to look for opportunities where you're going to get this by the way that things play.
Another great example would be tank commanders, where you can have like if they're getting touched and killed, you're probably losing anyway. Yep. So it can be a very useful. Okay, this can get me over the top for the win, or if I'm not getting this, I'm not winning anyway.
Yeah, I just think you need to be aware of that. As like, you should have this pile of plays. And you're like, okay, well, in this scenario, I'm able to play the While We Stand, We Fight card. But also understand there are very bad situations to play those in.
Yep.
And you have to do it properly.
Well, and with it's just another thing to add to the playbook of that specific army. I know players who literally have playbooks for different lists of like, these are all the relevant stratagems, these are all the relevant secondaries, like, you know, and they'll have it broken down to the point of like, okay, if I'm playing X type of army, these are the secondaries this is the pool I'm selecting from. And you can really refine that.
One other nuance to add to that is units that split up.
Yeah.
Particularly for orcs, their buggy units are just expensive enough that they're more expensive than anything else for the 3 of them. And it's very easy to say, well, sure, 300-point unit's a lot, but like when all I have to do is hide 100 points of it, and the rest of it can go at you.
Yep.
That's a more easy sacrifice.
Combat squad, Wolfguard Terminators.
Yeah.
Space Wolves don't get to have nice things, Mitch. I thought we'd been over this.
Yeah, you have to be Imperial if you want a combat squad.
Yep.
It's true.
That's fair.
Chaos doesn't do it.
So,
no dirty mutations.
I just want to share that I wanted everybody else to go first on this one because I think it is a good secondary that people are taking way too much.
Yes.
Most of the time I see people taking it, they're taking it as a win harder button. I hate that. Don't take a win harder button. That doesn't do anything for you. I will tell you that against me, I love it when people take it. Chuck has gotten almost nothing from when we stand we fight in the games that he's taken it. Like, I think that if you are playing top tier smash lists, it is very scary to say I could get 5 on this if my opponent kills the things that I already know are important. Chuck's example was great. There's a Chaos Army, it's going to board control, they've got 150 Poxwalkers, you've got 3 tank commanders, fine. When we stand we fight, great. The splitting up combat squad, that's kind of a cheat on when we stand we fight, that's great. But like, people were telling me to take it in my Dark Angels game against the Chaos, and it was going to be the Terminators and the 2 Talon Masters. And maybe I should have taken it because I didn't have a good third secondary, but my perception of that was, I'm going to put the Terminators in the middle of the table and he's going to kill them. That's the game. And I'm not going to lose when those Terminators die because there's lots of other stuff going on in the game than that. But those Terminators have to go hold the middle of the table for a while, and if they die, the Talon Masters are going to have to go to other objectives. If they're doing that, they are also at risk. So my 3 most expensive things could die and I could still win handily. If that's the sentence, my most expensive things could die and I'll still win, then when we stand we fight is not a good choice. Also, 5 points sucks. 10 points is okay, 15 points is great. So if you're taking when we stand we fight, you better have a plan to keep 2 of those things alive or it's probably not a good secondary.
I think it's particularly interesting for your example with the Deathwing. I watched that game. And I agree with your decision not to put it on there. I think even at the end you were like, well, maybe I should have. But that was because you survived. Because
I knew what happened?
There, yeah. Because if you put it on there, you already had a winning strategy for winning the game. So you only open yourself up to, if this goes wrong, then things fall apart by taking while we stand we fight in that scenario.
Right.
Right. You already had a good amount of board control and secondaries already coming in. So
to call us back to an earlier episode, I just remembered this. You took when we stand in our RTT game of Sisters and White Scars, and you regretted it because we have to threat trade in that game. And correct. So the Melta Sisters, in order to use them against me, they have to die. Right.
Well, to be fair, if I had not made relatively grievous errors that allowed you to get to them, I would have kept 2 of those squads.
Okay.
So my plan was somewhat solid. What I don't like about it is how much I had to play. Like, I put myself in a position where I had to play these units very specifically this way. So that's where you would argue that it wasn't worth it. I may have been able to be more aggressive with them. It's similar to the engage argument of like, do I want to put 2 units across the center line or not? Because they're going to die.
Well, and that's the other thing that we talked about a lot in 8th edition. This was originally a great topic Mitch brought up a bunch, is that you don't want to pick a secondary if it significantly hurts your win the game plan to get that secondary. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yep.
Like, we talked a lot about recon being a trap, Mitch, in 8th edition, before even Chuck was on the show. We talked about the idea.
It forced you to put units where you didn't want them.
Right, you had to sacrifice units to do it, and that's still the case, right? Okay, purge the enemy. Some of these are going to be very fast to talk about. Titan Hunters. Titan Hunters is your opponent playing Knights?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there is another. Maybe they're playing triple Shadow Sword, triple Baneblade.
They could be playing Chaos Knights.
It's true.
They could be playing
But if
Chaos
they do,
Knight.
just take it.
They could be playing a Harridan. I think the only place where this discussion is interesting is if they only have one.
Right, and then it's 10 points. Because 12 is great.
I think if you only have one and you think to yourself, my plan for winning this game includes killing that, then you take it.
Yeah.
If it doesn't
Exactly.
already include it, I don't think you do anyway.
That was exactly the conversation we had about Trogdor. Zach and I. I'm like, yeah, he's worth 10 points. Are you going to kill him? And the reality is that in that game, I didn't have to let him kill him. Had he been worth 10 points. So, that's fine. Okay, next one's Bring It Down. It just got nerfed. Man, I think the number of lists that this is good against is tiny now. Like, my entire Tyranid list gives up 11, and it is Monster Mash. And it only gives up 11 if you literally kill everything, which should not be what's happening in a close game.
Well, it's interesting because if you go back the other way, that means there's 4 points from large creatures on Thin the Ranks, and then 5 points from your little guys. So it's almost better to take it's almost even to take Thin the Ranks.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point.
I think this is literally just says you can't play 12 Penitent Engines and 12 Mortifiers.
Don't tell me what to do.
Well, yeah, lean into it then.
Well, I think that they just nerfed it too hard.
Yeah.
And we're at a time where vehicles aren't particularly good. Most vehicles are terrible. But the vehicles that are good, but they're not. Nobody's going to be bringing a parking lot against you right now, and that's going to be a serious list. So, I mean, it's nice to know. Inevitable. Go ahead.
I just prefer it this way.
Yeah.
There's a ton of armies that want to bring small buggies or little flying Eldar thingies and stuff that were just irrelevant because you were giving your opponent 15 points for no reason. And people were playing it the way it's supposed to be played, right? It was too punishing.
I think it's better. It was probably too punishing a nerf. We'll have to wait and see like the end result. But yeah, I don't know if it gets taken very much at all in the future. But
I guess what I'm trying to say is I prefer it not being taken than it nerfing what people could play.
Yeah, I agree.
I think it's strong in the middle of the meta because you're going to run into people that play. There's always going to be 9 Lehman Russ guy, right? You're always going to eventually run into 9 Lehman Russ guy.
Yeah.
So I think that's real. It's probably good against TJ's Monster Mash list since TJ just joined the chat, because I would imagine so. But maybe not. No, it's not.
Just 6 points.
No, it's only 6. He only has three big boys.
Oh, I thought he had 3 keepers and Magnus and.
No, that's
it's a different one.
That's Boss Baby's version.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Boss baby.
But even then, you're talking 10 points.
Yeah. Okay. So
Assassin's better.
the problem here isn't that can you get 10 points from a secondary. The problem is that some of the other secondaries in the other books that we're about to talk about give 15. That's the actual issue.
Yeah.
So, okay. The next one is really easy to talk about. It's Cut Off the Head. I've never taken it.
I don't think anyone in the world has ever taken it unless they were drunk.
Because the issue here is that
I wasn't drunk, but
well, the third round, if you kill the Warlord in the third round, which is like really just getting into the game, is 6. And 6 from a secondary is terrible. And most of the time their Warlord is just someone who can just, hide. So it's just bad.
It's extremely situational, and then it still doesn't pay out at full.
Yeah.
When the stars align, so it's like whatever.
The next one's Assassinate, 3 points per character. I think Assassinate's another hidden gem. I think there's a bunch of lists that have a lot of characters right now that are not super durable. Or maybe they're not durable, but maybe they're going to yell get some, and they're going to end up charging you. Like, if you're going to beat White Scars, you're going to kill their characters. So when you tell me I don't know what to take against White Scars because their characters are so hard to kill, you've already lost that game. In a close game, you will kill some of their characters because they just don't have enough stuff to stop that from happening.
4 of them?
People don't know what to take at all, so it might be that 9 points is good in this case.
Sufficient. Yeah.
And maybe White Scars is a bad example. Maybe Guard's a better example, right? Company commanders dropping down with plasma, 3 points a pop.
Or some Death Guard armies where they're like, I have these 9 characters. Right.
Sisters love to have characters.
Yeah.
Yep.
Although it's weird with sisters because if you want to kill my sister's character, I can decide that you do not.
I know.
on like many layers of actions.
Don't rub it in.
TJ says his hot take is that this edition has bad secondaries, and I'm just glad we're not playing 8th anymore.
Yeah.
I think these secondaries, while they're relatively challenging to max, well, we haven't talked about the codex secondaries yet, which I think are a real problem. But this group of secondaries, without the codex secondaries, I think are fine. There's good ones and bad ones. They need tweaking. But the 8th edition ITC secondaries were garbage, in my opinion, by the end. They were, I'm at the table. What points do I get for killing your army? Okay, I'll take those and then one other one. Or maybe only those if I'm playing against orcs.
To be
maybe
fair,
I just play only
the
those.
last packet that was put out got rid of Killmore. It's just that 9th came out, and so it didn't really get played.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, that's Assassinate. Now we're into the ones that nobody takes. I'm not going to talk about Raise the Banners because I think I don't appreciate it enough. So someone, Chuck, tell me why I should be excited about Raise the Banners.
You should never be excited about Raise the Banners because you are not the player to do it or the player to do it against.
Okay.
You play fast-moving, aggressive, flexible armies, and it is so easy to put some junk on a location and either take the banner off or prevent the banner from being put there that you don't want to play into Eldar and go like, oh, I'm going to raise the banners. They could literally be like, first turn, you'll raise no banners because I'm willing to toss these two things on here, and you lose a massive number of secondaries.
Uh-huh.
If you are playing two armies that want to grind, both of you should probably be considering it because it's probably 10 points. And if you want to grind and your opponent wants to stand back and shoot you, this is 15 points.
Uh-huh.
I think that's the whole thing.
So you can't score it on the first turn, right? Because you have to put the banners up.
You put the banners down, and you score at the end of every turn and at the end of the game.
So if you put 3 banners out, you get 12 points, provided those banners stay intact the whole time.
No, because you also get it at the end of the game.
Oh, do you? Okay.
So you'll trigger 5 scoring scenarios.
Okay.
Yeah, usually you can only get 2 on the first turn. So you're looking at between 10 and 15, depending on how things go.
So potentially 2, then 3, then 3, then 3, then 3. Potentially. Right. So 14.
That's the scenario if you are playing against somebody who's trying to shoot you off the table.
Okay. Falcon has to leave. He has a work situation, but he does say that he was excited to bitch about Codex Secondaries, so we'll bitch on his behalf here in a second.
All right.
Okay, so that's Raise the Banners. Investigate sites I've never seen anyone take. For those that are wondering, one infantry unit, excluding a character, can start to perform this action at the end of the movement phase if it's within 6 inches of the center of the battlefield, and no enemy units are within 6 inches of the center of the battlefield. It's at the completed at the end of the turn, and you get 3 points.
If it didn't have if no enemy units are there, it'd probably be fine. But the game is played at the center of the battlefield, so...
Yep. Okay.
It's dead.
Scramblers is the other most common taken thing because people are putting 40-point free deep strike bullshit into their lists just specifically so they can do it.
Yes.
I like that it's causing us to take stuff that isn't just about killing in our lists. I don't like that it's only 10 points, but it is because I think it's hard for being 10 points. But I think it's great. I think it's one of the easiest to do in the book for those 10 points. So, yeah.
I think of it as, I love it as the 4th one. It's like my 4th secondary. When I get a list built and I'm like, I can do these 3 things really well, and then I have to play Scramblers over here because my opponent is doing something and now I can't do one of the things I wanted to do.
Yeah.
Right? Then I can fall back to it. And since I only have to buy a 40-point unit, or in some cases like an 18-point unit or something to do that with, it's comfortable, and then you can find something like that unit can screen or stand on objective or something. You'll find a value in it in every game anyway.
Well, and he also that guy that came in to scramble, or those guys also are giving you engage points.
Engage, yeah. That's why that is such a valuable package, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm. The next one is Teleport Homer, which I've never seen or taken.
Yeah, me neither.
It's bad scrambles.
Is it bad scrambles? Yeah. Let's leave it as that then. Okay. How did they change Abhor the Witch? Because I don't have the FAQ in front of me.
It's fewer points. I think it just dropped 1 point in each category, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, okay. It's just fewer points. It's not an automatic, if you're playing against Grey Knights, it's good.
Yep.
But
it's still it still ruins Grey Knights and Zeech things. Just unfortunate. Those armies will need free 15-point secondaries so that they can be balanced back out. That will probably come in time.
Okay.
I personally don't like it at all, but
Yeah, I
maybe
agree.
that's because I have thousands of points just sitting on the shelf because of it.
Yeah, that seems fair. The next one's mental interrogation, and that's the one where you cast a psychic
Mm.
power on a character of the other army.
It's really
I
good when you remember it.
I've seen people get 9 off this. That's it. I've never seen anybody get 12 or 15 off of it. I think it's very specific, right?
Hmm.
All they have to do is run their characters away from you once they realize what's happening, or kill the characters that are trying to do it. 18 inches is very close in the current game.
Yeah,
Most things can get to most close combat things can close that distance and charge you. Uh, so because they
I
advance and
like it.
charge or whatever. Go ahead, Chuck.
I like it in armies. Like the game that Mitch and I played at Hammer Out Cancer. I switched. I took that because I didn't want to. There was no reason to get +1 attack on my units from my weird boy, and I knew I wasn't going to be jumping around the table.
Right.
So there was never a point at which I was going to use my psyker for anything else. And when you have that many boys, you can pretty much be sure he's never going to get caught out. Now I did flub it constantly, forgetting both to use it to move in a way that would allow me to use it, and then actually just using it because tired. But it's a good pick in that sort of scenario. I don't think you ever really want to take it if your opponent can deny you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like it's almost the counter to Abhor the Witch, where you're just like, okay, well, we're going to technically investigate you.
Right. Well, and the better example of that is Psychic Ritual. I think as I was preparing for this, I went through and realized there are lots of situations where my Tyranid list should take Psychic Ritual.
Hmm.
Because if they can't deny it, it's 15 points for casting 3 powers. Right?
Yeah.
Like, but if they can deny it, they just roll a little bit hot and you get 0. So
Yeah.
Psychic Ritual, I think, is actually badly designed because I believe that it says, it's basically saying, are you going to take the middle of the table and your opponent doesn't have denies? Here's 15 points, not useful otherwise.
Yeah. It tells a really interesting story that is a big part of a lot of 40k lore. It would be nice if it told it in a little bit less harsh way, as far as success and failure. But,
Okay. Personally, I would prefer that if it just gave me 3 black mana.
Mm.
Okay. I thought that was going to be funny and it wasn't. Let's just move on. Pierce the Veil. I don't know what it does.
Is that the one where you go
psychic
in there
psychic powers next to your opponent's battlefield edge and not next to enemy models. I saw or heard a story or something of the McDougal game where he played Scouring with Tyranids, and he just took a caster and moved it to the edge of the table and just cast powers all day game getting this. Because the Scouring has everybody in the middle of the table the whole game, so you can just be like, I'm just going to go over here. I'm going to go over here. I'm just going to take care of this.
I'm essentially in my deployment zone still, right?
Yeah, right. So
Yeah,
I think that the psychic ones, Warpcraft, all kind of suck compared to the rest, and I think that we all agree that Cut Off the Head is terrible. None of us particularly like banners, but it's okay. And then Linebreaker, yeah, I think this is great. So I think the guys in this book are fine. There are some that are wrong. They have already started tweaking them. They made Abhor the Witch better. They made Bring It Down better. So now we get into the part of the conversation where things get weird. They're giving each codex their own as well. Before we talk about the problem, how are the Necron ones?
let's see, what were they?
Okay, that's
an
perfect.
answer.
That's a great answer. How are the Death Guard ones?
Secretly better than people believe.
Okay. Spread the Sickness seems okay. Seems like it's better than like taking Scramblers because you might get 12 for it.
This is the way I see it. So this is my Death Guard idea: is you're playing for domination because Death Guard don't want to engage on all fronts. That's difficult.
Okay.
They want to take the center, and they want to take their 2 back objectives, and they want to challenge you to come do something about it. Right?
Uh-huh.
Well, if you play on a 6 objective board, or weirdly on the 4 objective board, that gets really difficult. But on the 6 objective board, you take this instead of domination as your battle plan, and you can easily hit 4 objectives with it, and that gives you your 12 points.
Okay.
So it's kind of like a replacement for domination.
Okay.
Their other one where you get a bunch of points for having bubonic Astartes in different locations at the end of the game is a great one if you just don't want to play with your opponent, right? Like if they're just going to obliterate you, you're just like, great, we're just going to hide all game long. And at the end of the game, we'll step out into these locations and look at all the points I have.
Uh-huh. Okay.
So I think good Death Guard players will use that sometimes.
Okay. So let's go to the problem. I'm going to start with the problem everyone knows about, and then we're going to pivot into the problem that this creates.
Mm-hmm.
The Space Marine Codex has Oath of Moment.
Yep.
We just presume that the Space Marine player that's taking Oath of Moment is going to get 15 points.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you have a way to keep them out of the middle of the board the entire game. And then they're only going to get like 9 or 8 or 10.
Well, the biggest way that I think a Space Marine player doesn't get is they forget to take the points.
Yes.
Like that's the most points you lose in that thing.
It is not well written. It is way too powerful. But the issue is that you can take a secondary from each Space Marine book.
Yes.
And where this comes in is, like Mitch mentioned earlier, Dark Angels have one where they pick an objective. It's called Stubborn Defiance, I think.
Yep. That's
Which,
the one.
by the way, is basically what having teenagers is. Stubborn Defiance is you pick an objective at the beginning of the game, and if you have an OBSEC Dark Angels unit on it, starting on turn 2, you get a cumulative number of points for them to being there. In my game with Zach, I put the banner guy directly in between my corner objective and the middle of the table, and I put a command squad on the objective. I'm now worried that they're not core. I'm confident that they're core. If they're not core, this didn't work and I was cheating. But I put a thing on the objective with the banner, okay, and the banner gave them OBSEC, and they just stood there all game and got 15 points.
Mm-hmm.
The bigger issue with this is, let's say there's a middle objective mission, and I think it's exactly a third of the missions have a middle objective. 3 out of 9. So the Dark Angels player says, great, I'm going to take Oath of Moment, which if I don't fall back and hold the middle is 3 points a turn, even if I never kill a monster or character. I'm going to take the special Dark Angels one, and I'm going to pick that middle objective. And then I'm going to pick the cast psychic powers near the middle of the table on Ezekiel, who has +1 to cast. Now, I'm going to deploy my entire army as close to the middle of the table as I can. On my first turn, I'm going to move to the middle of the table, and I'm then going to get 45 secondaries as long as I never move my Terminators out of the middle of the table.
Mm-hmm.
So now you have to come, and I'm getting 5 points on primary every turn because I'm on an objective. So I now hold a different objective, right? So now I'm getting 2 objectives. So now I'm getting 40 primary without doing anything else. I'm holding the objective I started on and the objective in the middle of the table. I'm getting 40 primary and 45 secondary and never have to move my army.
Yeah.
I think that's cancer for the game. I think that's absolutely terrible, and that's going to make that Dark Angels list. That's a force multiplier on the Dark Angels list.
Let's also not forget you can spend, I think it's 3 command points to make it so that they don't know.
Oh, it's not 3. It's like 1 or 2, isn't it?
Well, no. For the hidden objective, I thought it was 3. And so 1 secondary, they don't get to know what you picked. They don't get to know what objective you would have selected. Mm-hmm. And so they can't necessarily counter deploy, which means that you're going to almost certainly have a chance to get onto the objective you picked.
Yeah.
And then they only find out after you're scoring points.
It's good. Like, basically, they say, you have to play the game I want to play. You have to come here and attack my unkillable blob.
I just want to be clear. That stratagem is 1 CP.
1 CP? Yeah.
Oh, it's 1? Okay, I'm sorry. I thought it was 3.
Yeah.
It's even better.
Couldn't you use it 3 times too because it's not during the game?
I think the last line says once per battle.
It does, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's a once per battle thing.
And I don't even think that's that important in what we're talking. I mean, that's great. 1 CP is nothing, right? So sure,
no, I'm
go
not,
for it.
I'm just what I'm saying is it makes it even more consistent, and consistency is what competitive players are most normally drawn to. That consistency is what Yanari offered. Consistency is what GSC wished they had. The
problem is that army starts scoring full points. and says you have to do something about it, and it's an army that wants you to try to act on it so it can respond.
Uh-huh.
And so it has everything. To me, it's frustrating because that's the Death Guard shtick as well. I want to stand somewhere and then you have to act against me. And this army has the secondaries to back that up.
Yep.
So
I
it's
think
just better Death Guard.
I think the Dark Angels book is probably a little bit too strong, but this problem, Oath of Moment and the Dark Angels one, even forgetting any of the other secondaries, maybe they take Scramblers or something, is still way, way too good together. You shouldn't be allowed to take a Dark Angels one and a Space Marine one. You shouldn't be allowed to take, and then you shouldn't be allowed to take a Space Wolf detachment. I don't know if the Space Wolf ones are even good, but I'm just going to use them as an example.
You can't. So it only works 2 books deep. So if you take Dark Angels and Space Marines, it would work. But if you added Space Wolves, you could take the Space Wolf one and the Space Marine one, or the Space Marine one and the Dark Angels one, because the Space Wolves one will require that everything it just doesn't allow. They do conflict at that point.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
The Blood Angels is sort of similar, right? You can have the always get into your opponent's deployment zone, get a bunch of points, and take the center, get a bunch of points, and now your engage is maxed as well.
Yeah, and so here's the thing. And by the way, Alex McDougall says the online tourneys he's playing in have universally banned Codex secondaries until everyone has them, and that makes sense to me because it is a massive difference. There's already a have and have not issue of 9th edition codexes and not. That's a multiplier that makes that worse. What I'm really worried about is that everybody's going to get them and they're going to be as bonkers as the Space Marine book and the Dark Angels book, and we're going to go back to secondaries being 45 every game, and it's obvious which ones you're going to take. I don't want that. I don't think that that's inherently more interesting or more fun.
I don't think that that's what's going to happen, and that I'm just sad for a different reason. I think Space Marines are going to have those, and other people aren't.
Because Necrons don't have them, and who else have we seen? Death
Death
Guard.
Guard.
Death Guards are okay, but they're nowhere near as good as the Dark
They're
Angels.
not an auto 15.
Yeah.
Space Marines aren't putting any effort into getting that 15. They're just getting it.
This is probably a blind spot balancing issue for the codex writers and everything, because this really becomes far more apparent in a competitive situation where that consistency and that ability to continually get those points really he offers a huge advantage. So I think that we might see, I could see it getting FAQ so you can't double dip. I think that we will still probably see some haves and have-nots just in how they're written, and hopefully what we see, what I would love to see, is when they come out with new secondaries, when they update secondaries for the main book, they update all secondaries in all books that are printed at the time simultaneously, and they try and balance them. They just say, hey, yes, these are in different books, but we balance them all together because they are all secondaries and they all need to be aware of each other.
Yeah, I'm very glad to see that they've already changed some, right?
Yeah.
I don't know how I feel about those changes or not. Just they've said yes, we'll change these as necessary, because there's definitely not getting 2 secondaries from your codexes is nice. That's one way to handle it. Also, just bringing the power level down on all of those. So that they max 15 points, and then you actually have to hit your beat every time if you want the points, stuff like that.
And I'm okay with GW releasing rules that are a little bit too strong and toning them down. That's fine. That's the game, right?
Well, that's much better than them trying to make everything fine by making them bland or dumb.
Right.
So that you're not excited to do anything, right? I would rather be in a place where we're like, oh, that's too much, right? That it's exciting and everybody try it and whatever.
Now because let me now pitch the Dark Angels thing to you guys in from the other point of view. Man, my army is super durable and kind of slow and really wants to hold the middle of the table, and GW gave me secondaries that support that. Super cool that there are secondaries that play in the play style of the army that I'm playing. That's great.
Oh yeah, I agree. I don't think anyone's saying that we're upset that Dark Angels have good rules. I think that what happened here is that there's just a level of synergy going on with Dark Angels that exceeds what all the other currently existing 9th edition codexes have had. And from what we've seen from GW, I would expect them to bonk them back into line at some point. Unfortunately, we're not having the tournament output to give them like the clear, like if there's a red flag, like, hey, look, they just took 8 events in a weekend, guys. Like maybe dial that back. Like we don't have that, so it might be something to just live with for a while. I don't think they're going to get that much worse if they were to get nerfed. I just don't. They're the way that the rules are written, the things that GW normally touches to modify, unless they just go crazy with points, they're probably going to still be great.
Yeah.
Well, I can say things like being in the center being worth 1 point instead of 2. Suddenly you have a max 15 you can get over the course of the game, and every time you fail at something, you lose a point. That brings it in line with what I see the other secondaries being.
Right. So. Okay, so yeah, I think we're all basically in agreement on this. I also just want to be clear. I like bitching about Marines. I'm okay with Marines being a top power level thing. It's clearly important to GW. They're releasing a ridiculous number of models over the past 2 years to support this. They want their kind of okay, yeah, I know.
Poster boys.
Thank you, poster boys. Gus is very done done with podcasting time. He is over it. So yeah, I think they want their poster childs to be powerful. That's fine. I just want everybody else to be able to play too, and we're seeing that. Death Guard's book isn't terrible. The Sisters book they got at the end of 8th is not terrible. Other people are getting rules, and the one that we're really, really going to learn a ton from is Drukhari. Yeah. And the reason I say that is because so far, 9th edition mostly is either supplements or durable elite armies with small numbers of models, right? Mm-hmm. So this is the first time where we're going to get Fast and Fragile as a book. And I'm really into that. I really am curious what that's going to be like, because Harlequins are really good in 9th, and you know what they are? Fast and Fragile. Mm-hmm. So I'm really into that. I'm hoping that we'll get it. I'm hoping that we'll start hearing the previews soon. I'm going to try to do a launch party weekend of a couple people when Drukhari come out and display them over and over again with different lists, because I miss elves really badly, guys. I got to be honest. I'm enjoying my Space Marines. I'm enjoying Tyranids. But man, I own all these elves that I've not gotten to play with like at all in 9th edition. So
I'm going to help you to understand how I feel about the Death Guard book, because I also miss Chaos. And Death Guard came out, I was just like, nope.
Well, I had that. I watched Nick and John play on YouTube maybe a week ago now, and it was it was Nick and Siegler, and Siegler was playing Admech, and Nick made this list that was basically a giant thing of Death Guard Terminators, a super efficient shooting Dreadnought, 2 Plague Burst Crawlers, and then a bunch of other stuff. What's the lawnmower guys? 2 of them.
Lawnmowers?
Yeah, 2 of them, and basically, Admech had literally no game because Nick stood behind a wall for a turn and then took the middle of the board and just held it and shot him. And I was like, oh man, that is a really interesting Chaos list. I dig that. And then Dark Angels came out, and I went to make a Dark Angels list, and I made the exact same list, only better. Mm-hmm. And that sucks. I think that Death Guard are in a situation where they're going to be an ally. And I kind of wish TJ was on right now because he's in the comments, and I kind of want him to stand up for Chaos. But I just think...
So far, he's taken Morty and made him an ally in his list.
Yeah.
So I think he agrees with you to some degree.
Yeah, I think Morty is interesting because I think that if Morty is in a mono Death Guard army, he's bad and like hurting the army. But if Morty is in another army with other giant targets, suddenly he's great. So it's kind of weird. Morty doesn't want to be with his friends. He wants to be with his cousins from other armies. It's
Which he hates.
Who he hates. Right, exactly. Cool. So that's what we've got for you guys this time around. We are going to plan until tournaments start happening again and schedules move. We are just going to record every other Sunday at 10 a.m. Pacific. So if this time slot worked well for you, you can join us again. I'm hoping that between now and the next time we can do at least part of the mock-up tournament for the Sisters that we're planning. I think that'd be a hoot and a half. That's what I think.
It'd be a good time.
Yeah. So with that, we'll give you guys a couple things. Go find our YouTube, subscribe to our Twitch, like us on Facebook, like us everywhere. Our Patreon group is still going strong, 160 members, something like that. active conversation, lots of interaction with us if that's a thing that you're into. If not, you can interact with Ennis and Falcon
The boss
and
baby for sure. Yeah.
the guys from regularly in our voice chat is the guys from is Michael Tempe, the guys from Mob Rules, like it's a lot of people from a lot of other places.
Yeah, it is a phenomenal community to be. I cannot recommend it enough if you just want to talk lots and lots and lots of 40k.
Yes.
And centaurs, but yeah, no. The other thing is obviously Hammerhead Games, also a big sponsor of the Nopen. But check out their stuff. They've got all the acrylic products you could possibly want for markers, tokens, measurement tools.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay, so that's what we have for you guys this time around. As always, your feedback is very important in how we make the show. If you guys thought this was a good episode, I'd love to hear it. If you thought it wasn't a good episode, I want to hear that too. We are trying to make sure that we make the best content for you guys we possibly can, and that is something that is fundamentally important to us. With that, we will say goodbye to y'all, and we'll be back in a couple weeks. We'll probably stream in the meantime. Thank you, everybody. Have a absolutely wonderful Sunday, and we'll talk to y'all soon. Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
And go anyone who's not Tom Brady. Woo!